All right, good evening. Calling to order Tuesday, November 1st, first meeting of the month. I'll have our city clerk do a roll call, please.
Mayor Kaylee Clark,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Amy Lamb,
Here.
Councilmember Karen Howe,
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen,
Present.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember Ratuja Andapura,
Here.
Councilmember Roisin O'Farrell.
Present.
All right, thank you so much. So next, we have an exciting flag ceremony. We are joined by Cub Scout Pack 679, and they're going to start, I believe, soon. Yeah, go ahead.
Color guard attention. Will the audience please rise? Color guard advance. Scout salute. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice to all. 2. Color guard, post the colors. Color guard dismissed.
Thank you all for being here and for doing that. Makes it so much more entertaining that way. We really appreciate how respectful you all are, and thank you for such good questions earlier. Thank you all for being here. Okay. See you all. All right. Councilmember O'Farrell, do you mind doing our land acknowledgement? Oh, sorry.
Our land acknowledgement is a statement we read to recognise Indigenous peoples who are the original stewards of the lands on which we now live, work and recreate. The city is a proud partner of the Snoqualmie tribe, and we feel it is important to recognise the history and connection tribes have always had to these lands. Therefore, we will now read our statement. We acknowledge that we are on the Indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Thank you. Sorry, there was something going on with Zoom. Okay, so next I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0. Our agenda is approved. Next, we will move on to public comment. It looks like we have a few people here. So I'm going to go grab the sheet. All right, so first up, we have Sharon.
Oops. Good evening, City Council. It's been a long time. My name is Sharon Steinbus. I live at 24933 Southeast 14th Street, Sammamish, Washington. I am a member of the Sammamish Stewards. We are a volunteer group of community members actively involved in many areas of environmental work, including native plants, wildlife habitat, and stormwater. I am so excited to learn that you are working on a climate action plan. This seems very timely right now. We have been contacted by the Sammamish Independent, an online newspaper, for an interview. The Sammamish Stewards were asked about what actions we would like to see the city take with regard to climate change. And we collectively put together a response. And I kind of wanted to let you see it first so you didn't get cold-cocked. Anyway, our action request for the city naturally coincides with our mission, which is to preserve, protect, and promote the natural environment within the city of Sammamish. I've sent the compiled text of our thoughts to the City Council, and I would respectfully ask that you read it thoughtfully. First, however, thank you so much for all you have done and continue to do, including your support for our many fine parks and donated spaces, your support of the Wildlife Habitat Group and the WNPS Native Plant Group, the Native Plant Nursery, and soon-to-be greenhouse, the Stormwater Adopt a Pond and Adopt a Storm Drain programs, the Urban Forestry Management Plan, the Bee City USA, and just to name a few. We would ask that the city continue to take action to protect nature, including wildlife, to reduce deforestation. The urban heat island effect is real. And plant more native plants, especially when making considerations regarding all new construction in Sammamish, including the town center. With respect to this town center, I do have a couple of requests, one from Jan Bird, who is recovering from shoulder surgery. We wish her a speedy recovery. A good landscape buffer is needed between the houses next to 6th and the park at Lower Commons to keep the peaceful nature of the park and gardens. Can the city create a multi-use wooded trail system in that buffer area, which could also serve as a wildlife corridor by planting more trees and other native plants? In addition, rather than all stormwater being held in vaults, can there be daylighted stormwater or rain gardens that the animals can have access to? A beautifully designed pond with a fountain would be a lovely addition to the town center. Again, thank you for all that you are doing to protect the environment, and I hope you will take the time to read our additional actions request. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Steve.
Climate action meeting. Good evening. I'm Steve Christensen, and I've lived in Sammamish since 1987. At the October 4th council meeting, 3 high school students gave public comments on the need for a climate action plan. They noted that neighboring cities have plans, and one is needed in Sammamish. I'm here tonight to add my support for the plan as well. Depending on your source of information, the Earth's temperature has risen between 1.1 and 1.3 degrees Celsius since the period between 1850 and 1900, per the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Our atmosphere is now holding 416 parts per million carbon dioxide. To stay below that 1.5 degree threshold established during the Paris Climate Conference, we can only release an additional 420 gigatons of CO2. That's about 10 to 15 years worth of global emissions. While the final solution to the climate problem is at the national and international level, there are actions that can be taken locally to prepare for the eventual action by the federal government. The obvious biggest challenge is to eliminate the burning of fossil fuels for energy generation, be it for heating or transportation. These two sources combined are responsible for approximately 85% of the carbon dioxide generated, and elimination will get us well beyond the carbon neutral point. As individuals, we can make changes in our lives that will matter. Or are we headed for a dystopian future? The solution demands that we electrify everything. And when we achieve this goal, we will likely be surprised by how little it affects our lives. Electrifying means for us as individuals that it's the big purchases that matter. For example, your next water heater needs to be electric. We need electric cars, heat pumps, induction stoves, and possibly solar on our roofs. The immediacy of the problem places emphasis on the need for a climate action plan. Electrifying everything should be our goal. Consider how you could make it easy for rooftop solar to include a rating of individual roofs for potential of sufficient electricity generation. Can the city's building codes emphasize electric appliances? Can we build more public car charging stations in the city? Can we prohibit new gas hookups? Can we sponsor group purchase campaigns for electric appliances, especially water heaters and heat pumps? And even sponsor competitions for the lowest carbon footprint. I'd also like to know that even though House Bill 1099 wasn't passed in the last legislative session, it is on the 2023 agenda. Thanks for attention.
Thank you. Next, we have Troy.
Hey everybody, my name is Troy Starr and I've called Sammamish home for about 18 years now. High-speed internet is a critical piece of infrastructure that powers modern economies. It helps communities to reduce traffic and its associated environmental impact thanks to the ability to work remotely. It helps local businesses to compete, and it also is required for effective remote learning. Over the past year, I was working abroad in a country that had seriously invested in affordable high-speed internet. Not only was symmetrical gigabit internet widely available in people's homes from multiple providers, it was very affordable and often thrown in as an option with your cell phone plan. Now that I've returned home to Sammamish, the difference in internet service is very noticeable. According to the most recent FCC broadband map, only 24% of residents of Sammamish have access to high-speed fiber internet. Compare that to our neighbors in Issaquah, where over 50% have access to fiber internet, or to our neighbors in Redmond, where over 90% of their residents have access to fiber internet. For most people in Sammamish, the only viable option they have for high-speed internet is from Comcast. Comcast's latest financial report shows that their broadband growth has significantly slowed over the past 6 months, gaining only 14,000 broadband customers across the country. But they plan to continue growing revenue in their broadband division. To make up for the lack of new customers, they said that they will increase the amount of revenue they get from their existing customers. So it seems likely that we'll see rate increases and additional fees in our future. In a healthy marketplace, we would have viable competition to keep prices in check and service quality high. The typical price for symmetrical gigabit fiber internet in the Seattle area is roughly $65 to $80 a month, with no long-term contracts, no data limits, and no hidden fees that make it hard to understand what the true price of service will be. But without access to viable alternatives, the majority of Sammamish residents are captive to a monopoly provider with monopoly terms at monopoly prices. I'd love to see the city lead the effort to ensure all Sammamish residents have access to affordable, high-speed, symmetrical fiber internet, just like so many of our neighbors in the Seattle area already have. That could be from commercial providers, such as Ziply Fiber, CenturyLink, or others. Or the city could explore some type of municipal broadband deployment. Either way, the people of Sammamish deserve to have viable options that incentivize all broadband providers to offer great service at affordable prices. This would help Sammamish to stay as one of the best communities to live in the United States. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Armagnac?
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, City Council members. Hi, the community. My name is Armenak Bedoyan, and I live in Sammamish with my family. We have 3 kids and a dog. We purchased our home in February of 2021, so it's been about 2 years or close to that. And our children go to public schools, Mid Elementary, Inglewood, and Eastlake High School. And I came here to share my safety concerns about absence of proper drainage system in our neighborhood between Louis Thompson Road Northeast and Cross Streets. And things that we experienced during the last almost 2 years here on our street, the 209th Avenue Northeast, there is a lot of water that comes down from the area above our house, and when it rains hard. And the water pools onto the roadway surface, flooding the 209th Avenue Northeast, which is the sole road access to our home and 10 other houses. So that severe roadway flooding problem I heard of when the water level is at 6 inches deep, that may prohibit entrance to the street for residents as well as for emergency access. Another problem we experienced was in February 2022, earlier this year. We had a flooding on 209th Avenue Northeast on our street, and the water poured down our driveway, and we had to put sandbags to protect our home. And lastly, on our street, on 209th Avenue Northeast, we have a roadside ditch on the upper side of the 209th Avenue Northeast, where we see water all year long. We are concerned about that water being there all the time, and it has some signs of like not being very healthy water, and with dog and kids playing around, we are concerned that this standing water may pose health risk. So with all of those safety concerns, I'd like to bring your attention to the assessment that City Council had done in the past, which was called Tamarack Drainage Improvements, or actually it was, just a second. Right, so there was an assessment done in the area for proper infrastructure for drainage. Oh, I'm out of time.
Yeah, I'm so
But
sorry.
that's what I wanted to support.
Yeah, thank you so much. Cindy?
Hello, my name is Cindy Taylor, and I'm also here to talk regarding the Tamarack stormwater drainage issues. I've been living in Sammamish with my family in the same home since 1994 for 28 years. I am one of the downhillers who received flooding from above in the Tamarack neighborhood. My goal today is to talk about the importance of Tamarack drainage improvements by walking through a timeline. In 2007, the city knew of drainage problems in Tamarack. By 2011, the City Council had a formal study with alternatives A, B, and C, including preliminary costs. In 2012, a single house above us on 209th Avenue Northeast put in a private storm drain, which was permitted and approved by the city. In 2013, a landslide occurred on our property where there are steep slopes. In response, the city put a temporary pipe down our hill to bypass the landslide. The cost to do this was minimal, $1,000 to $2,000 max. In 2014, another landslide occurred on the same steep slope. The city's idea was to infiltrate the stormwater at the bottom of the slope, which is in our yard, and used by pedestrians to connect walking within Tamarack. But there was just too much water to infiltrate. The water ended up ponding in our yard and overflowing our road, 208th Avenue Northeast. This temporary pipe took problem stormwater from 209th above us and brought the flooding into our yard and our road on 208th. Also in 2014, before a senior city stormwater staff member left, he mentioned that we should ask about the stormwater retrofit for Tamarack, something we had never heard of prior. By early 2015, we had researched and found that 40 houses had been built in Tamarack since 2000. 20 of these houses are above us, 10 of those are within a landslide hazard area. In March of 2015, neighbors spoke at City Council regarding our concerns with excess stormwater runoff. In April 2015, the city found $271,000 in the budget for a Phase 1 for Tamarack. $200,000 were put towards a downstream analysis. This analysis was completed during 2016. Also in 2016, all of the neighbors along the project alignment attended a city-run meeting intended to solve Tamarack drainage problems by constructing a project named SW12 Tamarack Drainage Improvements. It is now 2022, and we are still waiting for this project or any reasonable code-compliant solution to be implemented. Nothing has been done except to push flooding and stormwater drainage issues further down the hill. Thank you.
Thank you. Jita?
Hi, everyone. My name's Jita Sahota. I live in the Tamarack division as well. I've been here since 2006, 2007, and I've owned a couple of homes in the same area. I have one home right now. I'm a single mom of 2 teenage girls, so I'm taking my time out again to be here to bring up the issue. So this is just an update of the dollars that Tamarack pays to the city of Sammamish for stormwater and CIPs. So I did send in a public comment on October 4th. I've sent in some inputs for your public hearing for stormwater CIPs. So if hopefully you've received those. And I just want to give an update on the accounting of what Tamarack has paid. So on December 13th, 2016, I came in and I had some numbers. And I presented them to the city council. So there was a former city manager named Lyman Howard, and I'm just going to quote what he had said at that time. He said that essentially surface water fees go to maintain the whole system. For example, the surface water fees I pay at my house go into my neighborhood, and they also go to pay on 228th, etc. They are not neighborhood specific as such, but are part of the collective whole. For all practical purposes, everybody shares in taking care of stormwater issues throughout the city. So versus going to specific neighborhoods. And he says, you do raise a valid point that you contribute, and in your particular area, you can make the argument that you are not getting the same benefits as those in other areas. So this is what he quoted, what I've quoted from him. So after that meeting, the city eventually adopted policy regarding that there be a public benefit to doing work in a private area. Furthermore, I understand that in the past, and even in recent years, the city of Sammamish has done work in private areas. And so I have not seen that in Tamarack. So my email today, hopefully you've received it, is best efforts to show you how much Tamarack has and does contribute to the city of Sammamish while not receiving the support and infrastructure needed here in Tamarack, particularly in the landslide hazard and steep slopes along Northeast 4th Street and 210th Avenue Northeast. And where I live is 209th Avenue Northeast. So the amounts following are we've paid over $715,000 for surface water management fees from 2022, over $70,000 in system development charges for new homes built in Tamarack paid to the city, over $1 million in taxes paid in the past 5 years, and over $345,000 additional annual revenue. So we've paid over $2 million, and hopefully you'll consider our our concerns here. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to speak that didn't get a chance to sign in? Mary? Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Mary Wichter, and I'm a Sammamish resident of 22 years. I also live in Tamarack, but due to your consent, agenda item number 3 for the approval for George Davis Creek, it's the PBRS engineering, I did want to speak on salmon things. So tonight I'm speaking for myself. I am a member of the Kokanee Work Group. I've been volunteering there, I don't know, officially since 2017, writing technical information, asking questions at meetings. And I also visit Zaccoose Creek and George Davis Creek because I live actually between them, and that is land that used to be owned by the Snoqualmie tribe ancestors, and that's in the records as well. So thank you for the land acknowledgement to that. So the first picture that I tried to give everybody is one of Zaccoose Creek. And at the most recent Kokanee Work Group meeting, which I'm sure Council Member Roshino Farrell can confirm, the Kokanee tribe member said, yeah, the freeboard, that's the space under there, is pretty low. I know Christy Malchow, when she was mayor, she's like, yeah, it's so low, I think it would like wipe off the dorsal fin for a salmon. And I know it's getting studied, but one of the reasons that you have this amount of sediment transport with silt is that you're not dealing with the upland areas. And Tamarack is one of those upland areas. And if you deal with that, you will find public benefits for doing it. So the real reason I wanted to speak tonight is with George Davis. I know that the project costs a lot of money. And I believe that George Davis is too steep, and I believe that there's too much glacial outwash soils, which are really sandy, and they wash down. So if you want to save salmon anywhere, you need to not smother them. So I'm going to talk about this picture a little bit. The bird cages are where it goes to a high flow bypass, and there's taking there. This was taken on February 28th, so there was a lot of water for a day or two, and you can see that the silt and sediments run really, really, really cloudy. And as soon as water has to turn or slow down, it drops its load. And sediments also are the things that carry pollutants in them. And what I've learned about the salmon is that kokanee in particular, they're like a dwarf sockeye. So they like smaller gravels. They don't like the big gravels. They like gravels that are about the size of a walnut. And anything bigger than that, they can't really do it. And then they swim upstream, spawn, lay their eggs. The male puts the milt on them. And then the eggs sit there, and the eggs need upwelling of water. They need water to come through and give them oxygen. They need it to carry away metabolic waste. And then when those eggs are eyed up and then they hatch into alvin, those alvin have a little sac that they eat out of so they can swim around in the stream. But if they can't swim out of the gravels, they've got a problem. So between when the salmon spawn, which is like September, October, November, which is actually now, and when they hatch, grow to the alvin, and then they move to the fry and they swim to the lake, you're talking like March, April. If there are sediment transports like this that get carried down, it will actually smother the fish. So Toby Kanan and all the staff are really great, but the chief of Muckleshoot Cried said, what's your plan for sediment transport? Do not do this project until you know, or you will invite the salmon to be entombed.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Cool. Move to the online.
If there's anybody in attendance online that would like to give public comment, please raise your hand. I see 2 hands up. I'll promote them one at a time. One moment, please. Tom Odell.
Thank you, Council. Good evening. Tom Modell here, 33-year resident of Sammamish, also a longtime member of the Kokanee Work Group. I'm here to also address the same agenda item that's on the consent calendar number 3, but I am going to speak in favor of it. I believe that this is a major step forward in helping to restore the viability of the Kokanee population within the Lake Sammamish watershed. Currently, we only have 3 viable streams. Right now, Issaquah Creek is not usable for Kokanee, but the other 3 are, and this would be the 4th. There's a potential for additional spawning reach of about 4,000 feet above the parkway. And this 4,000 feet would resemble basically the Ebre Creek watershed, where in the first year after it was open to the upstream area, they had 2,000 fish go up there with a tremendous spawning success rate. Yeah, there may be a transport problem up there, but that can be engineered. And frankly, if we do a good job of restoring the plantings in the area, that will be mitigating it considerably. But yeah, I agree we need a plan, but at the same time, I think this project needs to go ahead. The cost to the city of this whole project is $1,064,000 and change, of which 32% or is actually borne by the city in the end, and that reduces our cost to $342,000, give or take. One benefit is that we'll also be improving the stormwater system in this whole watershed and significantly reducing our ongoing annual maintenance cost in this area, which is significant. So I'm going to recommend the council do approve this project. It will piggyback on what the county is doing down below. They are going to be replacing the culverts in the 2 crossings down below the parkway. So this would be, again, a major plus for the Kokanee, and I think a very good investment on the part of the city of Sammamish. I thank you, council, for your attention, and I hope you will agree with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excuse me, we have one more attendee that I will promote right now. Paul Stickney.
Good evening, City Council. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. Here to talk about tonight's 2-year budget, which has about a $56 million revenue shortfall. However, if you factor in contingency funding that's been removed from the past cycles, increases in property tax taken the last couple of years, revenues being up about $8 million in this current budget, there's a lack of spending on ADA requirements. There's the use of one-time ARPA money and far less capital spending in our community than before 2018. This number easily exceeds twice the 56 million. But the main thing I'm here to talk about is what is a way out? A way out is to generate revenue and at the same time enrich and sustain our community. How? Address long-standing local housing shortages by increasing different, diverse, and smaller housing styles and reducing future amounts of housing types we have oversupplies of. Doing this would meet about 1/3 of our local housing needs as of 2010. And when I say this, my suggestion from lots of study is to reduce future amounts of large single-family homes by about 2,000 and increase different, diverse, and smaller houses over time by about 8,000, which is a net increase of 6,000 smaller, different housing. And this would meet about 1/3 of housing needs in our community as of 2010. What happens if we do net 6? Here are some key close estimates. New car trips, equal or less. Student generation, 40% less. Stormwater impacts, extraordinarily less. Over 500 acres, far less impacted from housing development. Circle back to revenue for the budget. Our city would receive about $200 million in one-time fees and roughly $30 million more income per year, renewable and sustainable. And for those that want to remain in Sammamish over time, 8,000 of our local households over time could experience the joy of staying and share in well over $200 million a year in savings by having needed, wanted, essential, different and diverse housing affordability options. These relevant, holistic results are powered by I2E3 growth. It's a win-win-win, a non-zero sum game, and virtually everyone and everything stands to gain. Appreciate the chance to speak tonight.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that, as an attendee, that would like to give public comment tonight? Please raise your hand. I don't see anybody else raising their hand, so we're back to you, Mayor.
Great, thank you, Lita. All right, so next we have our first executive session to evaluate the qualifications of an applicant for public employment pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101G. Council can or may take action afterwards. Do you all want to start with 30 minutes? I know it's not enough time, but we can start with 30. How about that? So let's be back at 7:40 to give us time to get back there to start. Yeah, thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. So we do have a couple things. So first, I do want to thank all of our candidates involved in the city manager recruitment. This was probably long and hard work, a lot of research, and for traveling here. I do also want to say that we did have one drop out, which was Robert Harrison, so we are down to 4 candidates. I think we had probably a great pool to choose from. We're really fortunate. I think what we always call it is our good problem to have, having some really great candidates. And we do have a couple of motions. I believe, we as a council, when we did the probably interim city manager negotiations, and before that, we did a subcommittee to negotiate, so of 3. So first, I would like to ask if anyone would like to volunteer for that subcommittee of 3. So got 1, Councilmember Stewart. Oh, I don't know if you guys are doing this or not. Councilmember Stewart, Councilmember Howe, and Councilmember Indepure. Okay, so I do have that language in front of me if you want me to make it, or I can give it to you, Deputy Mayor. Cool. So it's this. I didn't fill it in, but it's that first motion.
I move to authorize a council subcommittee comprised of Councilmember Stewart, Councilmember Howe, and Councilmember Indepure to negotiate an employment agreement for the city manager position.
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0. You 3 are our subcommittee. And I'll entertain a motion for the next piece.
I motion to direct the council subcommittee to negotiate an employment agreement with interim city manager Scott McCall.
Second. All right. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? And I'm looking at my thing if you guys want to raise hands. Councilmember Howe.
Thank you. I believe that Scott McCall has purported himself extraordinarily well under very difficult circumstances, where in effect he took on a role early in his early days here, even when there was a prior city manager, Dave Rudat, where he stepped in and filled an absence, frankly, of someone being in the room, and filling in and learning on the job and learning as quickly as possible. Since then, we've tasked him with far more, and he has not had the benefit of having an assistant or deputy underneath him, and so he's been stretched quite thin, I believe. However, he has been there for us as a council. I believe he's been there for staff. I appreciate very much the way he answered certain questions during the interview process. For example, the one where he said he wanted to show staff how they were appreciated and was able to work with us to get funding for a bonus for staff after 2 years of COVID. And I listened to that and I thought, well, not only did he recognize a deficit, he figured out how to fix it, and he made it happen in short order. And I look at execution, I look at outcome, I look at staff, and I want to make sure that they are supported in every way possible. I believe that Scott is that person who can do this. Thank you.
Yes. Deputy Mayor Lamb? Were you? Oh. Sorry, your hand disappeared.
No.
Councilmember Indepure.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to echo what Councilmember House said. I think it's been it's been a difficult 2 years probably for the city with a lot of turnover on this dais, and I think the interim city manager has done a good job of stepping up, ensuring that the channels of communication are open. I think there have been other challenges with staff, but understanding, actually, I've had a chance to talk to a majority of the directors and also to the union. And I think the feedback has been very consistent and positive that everybody would appreciate the continuity. I think, it's a tough position right now with being a candidate and interim city manager. And I think the one thing that did stand out for me, which was actually in the conversation that Scott and I had when the council members had a chance to sit one-on-one, was his role that he plays outside of work, but I think he brings it into the work, is as a coach and making sure that everybody is acknowledged, appreciated, is part of the team, and so I really support this motion.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
We've had a lot of the candidates. They're all very talented. I support our interim city manager because we've been through a couple of difficult years with interim city managers and a city manager that we recently had to separate with. And rebuilding trust and transparency is really at the top for us as a council. And I see that I see all the decisions that our interim city manager making is through that lens of trust and transparency. So I really want to put our council and the city on a good path forward. I spoke to all the directors. And, I lean into supporting staff and the directors. Thank you.
All right, Council, any other comments? Okay, so a motion on the floor is for our subcommittee to enter or negotiate employment agreement with Scott McCall for the position of city manager. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, by 7-0, congratulations, Scott. I do want to say thank you for sticking with us, and also to all the city staff. I know you've had to do a ton of background work. Thank you to our consultants as well for bringing us some really great candidates and having that issue. So, yeah, thank you all. Okay, breather. So next we are moving to consent. I will entertain a motion to approve the calendar, consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved in.
Can I remove that? I never remember the number, Scott. Was it 3 or 4 that I asked about? Shoot, sorry. No, I only asked about one of them.
I believe you asked about consent agenda item 4.
Yeah, could we just pull that for just a brief second at some point?
Sure. Audrey is prepared if council wants to pull that and put it on to new business.
Can we do it like, I don't know if Audrey needs to stick around till the end. Can we put it somewhere so she doesn't have to stay till like the very end of
Yeah, and
times?
apologies, council member. Audrey did respond while you all were during the meeting tonight to your remaining question.
Oh, did she? Oh.
Yeah,
All right,
and I
never mind.
know-
I'll withdraw. Is it, hold on. Is it in here? I didn't see it.
I believe it went to everybody, but let me double check. But we can pull it out really quickly if you
Okay.
want to address it.
I did not see that response. I'm sorry.
Apologies. Oh, I apologize. Allow me, if you would, Mayor, to read out the response. So this is agenda item 4. The supplemental agreement scope is additional work to map low-impact development features and digitize as-built drawings in the city's mapping system for newly constructed projects, LID features, and to upgrade maps. Mapping stormwater facilities is an ongoing permit requirement for our NPDES permit. In addition, updated GIS maps and features are key for the storm team's inspections, maintenance, hotspot route, and responding to utility locates. And Councilmember, if that doesn't fully answer your question, then I would suggest that we pull it.
I'll let it go. We got a full agenda. It's fine. I withdraw my request to pull it.
All right, so it has been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Consent has passed. Next is our presentations and proclamations. So I have a couple here. Do I have any volunteers for either Native American Heritage Month or lung cancer awareness?
I'll take one.
Okay. Okay.
I can do the other one.
Okay.
This is the long one. Thank you. Proclamation, Native American Heritage Month. Whereas Native American Heritage Month is recognized annually to honor indigenous cultures, histories, traditions, art, and achievements, and whereas in the face of broken treaties, violent displacement, and genocide, Native Americans have persevered and continued with remarkable strength, resistance, resilience, and self-determination. And whereas Native Americans, including Duwamish, Snoqualmie, Snohomish, Squamish, Tulalip, and many others have been protectors and stewards of our natural resources and environment since time immemorial. And whereas the city of Sammamish values the many contributions made to society by Native people in technology and science, philosophy, the arts, and especially our local Indigenous volunteers and leaders. And whereas the city of Sammamish recognizes that we must work to combat the impacts of discrimination and racist policies on Native people, past and present, and eliminate inequities stemming from colonization. And now, therefore, Mayor Kaylee Clark, on behalf of the Sammamish City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of November 2022 as Native American Heritage Month.
Thank you.
And I'll read the proclamation for the Lung Cancer Awareness Month for the month of November. So whereas lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death among men and women in the United States and in Sammamish in 2021, accounting for far more deaths than colon cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer combined. Whereas according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, there were 5,099 new lung cancer cases and 2,012 2,996 deaths because of lung cancer between 2015 and 2019 in King County, whereas the 5-year survival rate for localized lung cancer is around 59%, yet only 17% of lung cancers are diagnosed at this stage. Whereas screening for lung cancer for high-risk individuals using low-dose computed tomography can lead to earlier detection of lung cancer and save lives, reducing the mortality by 20% when compared to the screening by chest X-ray in the National Lung Screening Trial, and reducing the risk of death at 10 years by 24% in men and 33% in women, as demonstrated by another large randomized trial. Whereas funding for lung cancer research trails behind funding for research of many other cancers, and additional research is needed in early diagnosis, screening, and treatment for lung cancer, as well as in lung cancer affecting women and lung cancer health disparities. Whereas lung cancer incidence is decreasing twice as fast in men as it is in women. Each year, more women die from lung cancer than breast cancer, and by 2035, more women will die from lung cancer than men. Whereas African Americans have the highest lung cancer incident and mortality of all races, and disparities in lung cancer screening, diagnosis, treatment, and mortality are well characterized among African Americans and other racial minorities. Whereas lung cancer in never smokers is the 7th leading cause of cancer-related death and accounts for 17,000 to 26,000 deaths in the U.S. every year, 60 to 70% of never smokers diagnosed with lung cancer are women, and the proportion of lung cancers diagnosed in never smokers is increasing in the U.S. Whereas organizations working in the Sammamish community, such as the American Lung Cancer Screening Initiative and the Women's Lung Cancer Forum, are committed to educating about lung cancer and lung cancer screening and working to increase lung cancer screenings in Washington. Therefore, Mayor Kelly Clark, I did not say Kelly Clark, and the Sammamish City Council hereby proclaims November 2022 as Lung Cancer Awareness Month and recognizes the need for research in lung cancer affecting women and lung cancer health disparities, and encourages all citizens to learn about lung cancer and early detection through lung cancer screening. Signed this day, 1st of November 2022.
Thank you. I'll have you read them every month from now on. Okay, next we're going to go to our public hearings. So I think I'm turning over to Scott and Chris first? Yeah.
For those online, bear with us for a moment here while we're pulling up the presentation. All right, Chris, take it away.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, council members, and Mr. City Manager. To hopefully make it easy to understand the 2023 property tax levy ordinance, we prepared a short presentation. Excuse me. I'll cover a few pertinent points, then go into a couple of charts and examples, and if you have any questions, we can go on from there. Few property tax facts. By state law, the increase in the dollar amount of property taxes the city can levy citywide is limited to 1% per year. The 1% increase to the city for 2023 is $315,403. That's calculated by the King County Assessor. They're required to tell each entity what their 1% limit is, and that's for the entire city, and it's spread out over all of the properties in the city. The voters may pass a levy lid lift to raise the increase above 1%. That has never happened in Sammamish. They have not been asked to do that. The next one, the assessed value is an interesting one. If you're like me, when you got your assessed value at home, you had to sit down, get your glasses out, get a piece of chocolate cake or something and say, this can't be true. But apparently it was. So the assessed value of property fluctuates. The property tax rate fluctuates in the opposite direction. So if the AV goes up, that results in a decrease in the property tax rate, and that keeps your property taxes from going wild when the AV increases dramatically. And the fourth and last little fact is that about 15% of the total property tax levy collected by King County goes to city services. That's from residents in Sammamish. While 64% goes to schools, and the remaining 21% goes to King County and various small taxing districts. We have a little pie chart to show you the distribution from 2022 of the 15% going to Sammamish. We're using the Issaquah School District. There are 2 other school districts in Sammamish, but it's the same general idea that most of the taxes go to schools. And this is an example of a home in Sammamish. We're doing the same chart, but with dollars. So the median home value in Sammamish in 2022, according to the King County assessor, was $1,053,000. And the property tax levy rate for all of the districts in Sammamish in 2022, we're using the Issaquah School District here, was $9.62 per $1,000 of assessed valuation. So in this mythical median home, King County collected $10,125 in 2022. The city got $1,495 of that. So most of it goes elsewhere. And our last illustration is your median home again with 22 and 23. So the median home value for 22 again was $1,053,000. The county has not told us the median home value for 2023 yet. So I applied the 47% increase in assessed valuation for the city as a whole. We do know what the city's total AV is for 2023 taxes. It went up 47%. So I applied that to the 2022 median home value and came up with an estimated median home value 2023 of about $1.5 million. So when we take this mythical median home, in 2022 the levy rate was $1.42 per $1,000. They would have paid $1,495 to the city in taxes. In 2023, King County assessor estimates the tax levy rate will be 98 cents per $1,000, and this same home would pay $1,514 to Sammamish. So about a $19 per home increase if you take the 1%. So that assumes that, of course, his home value increased exactly the same percent as the city as a whole. So they're not all going to be this way. Some will be less, some will be more. But it's a pretty small increase per the median home to take the 1%. And that's about the end of my little tutorial. The property tax calendar. Tonight we're doing this brief presentation and council discussion if you'd like any questions. And open a public hearing on property taxes. Then we'd ask that you continue that until the 15th of November. And then close the public hearing and vote on the property tax levy ordinance. King County's deadline to submit the property tax levy ordinance is November 30th. So any questions or comments?
Great, thank you. Council, I'll open it up. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, thank you for that. I love that we take the time to explain that because it's really confusing to people that as their home values go up, even when we take increases, they're not as big as they seem, right? 1%, everybody thinks it's a 1% increase in taxes when really it's much smaller than that. So thank you, Chris, for explaining that. I do think everyone will be surprised. I do want to call out that if you think that the assessed value of your home is incorrect, there is information on the King County website where you can ask questions about that and potentially have them come take a look at that. But it is a very small amount to the city of Sammamish when we take that 1%.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have questions? So I think next I can open the public hearing, and we open to public comment now through the 15th. Okay, great. So public hearing is open. I'm not sure if we have anyone in the room or online that wants to give public comment on the property tax. If not, definitely we'll have an opportunity at the November 15th meeting and via email, always open 24/7. Cool. Do we have anyone in the room or online that would like to give comment? I don't know if you can see anyone, Lita.
Is there anybody in the attendees that would like to speak for the public hearing? Please raise your hand. I see one person has just raised their hand. I will transfer them. Yeah, because Paul Stickney?
Oops, sorry about that. Good evening, City Council. John Wilson, the county assessor, spoke to the Sammamish seniors. Then about a week later, he held a town hall on October 17th, the same night as a sustainability meeting, so I didn't go to that. But I got a copy of his presentation. Has some interesting information. They do use a 1,053,000 average value, but in John's presentation, and this isn't about just property tax of the city portion, this is about someone's property tax within the city of Sammamish for their entire property tax, and it goes to this topic just so everyone is roughly aware. He forecasts that the entire tax bill for a typical home in Sammamish will go up about 13.7%. I'm not arguing with any of the information that the staff showed. I agree with all of that for the city portion of taxes. Just want to be aware that our residents on average are facing about a 13.7% increase in their entire tax bill from 2022 into 2023. That's my only comment. Good job on the staff presentation on this topic for the city portion. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Is there anybody else that would like to give public comment? Please raise your hand. I don't see any further hands raised.
Great, thank you. And yeah, reminder that will be open till the 15th of November for public comment. So next, is it to you, Aaron, this time? Cool. We will do our next public hearing and first reading. So I'll pass it off to Aaron.
Good evening, mayors, deputy mayor, and council. We're going to go through make sure that's all flowing for me there. Okay, so for the budget portion, we're going to do a budget overview, and then we're going to hold the budget public hearing on the interim city manager's 2023-2024 preliminary budget. So first, a brief overview of the budget. Again, a reminder on the calendar of the steps that we've taken in public meetings. We went in June with the financial sustainability workshop. We proceeded through August with the City Council goal-setting retreat. In September, there was discussion and council direction on stormwater rates and programming levels. And then in September and October, so the September 13th, we talked about the base budget, and in September 27th, we talked about the adds to the base, and then on October 4th, we talked about the capital funds, and then talked further on the stormwater utility rates, and we also had a presentation from Eastside Fire and Rescue related to the fire services portion that they were updating as part of our budget. And so that brings us to tonight, the November 1st. This is the public hearing on the city manager's budget that was filed on October 14th. So that's available on the city website and has been available since then, as well as the public notices having been provided and met before the public hearing that we're having tonight. So just a reminder of the overall interim city manager budget message, and these were things that were touched on at the various workshops, recognizing that this budget proposal uses fund balance. It reflects the work plan. It goes through these different items, assuming full staffing for the biennium, and we do have economic pressure on the budget, and that continues through our budgeting process. We saw that early on in the summer. That's obviously continued through the remainder of the year and is ahead of us. So a brief overview on how the funds are organized. So we have 11 different city funds. We talked about this at the workshops. This is the general fund, is our main general source of unrestricted revenues and expenditures. Then there's the capital funds grouping, and that's the general government capital fund 301, the parks capital fund 302, and the transportation capital fund 340. Then there's the internal service funds that are supporting the general fund operations. So that's your fleet and equipment. So when we're reserving to buy and purchase fleet and assets, that's related to those contributions that come from the general fund. The technology fund has both an operating and capital component, as there are capital costs that the technology fund uses and purchases, as well as the ongoing operating of IT support. Risk management is the liability insurance fund for the city. And then the last fund category is the stormwater management fund, and that has both an operating component and a capital component. So the two fund numbers there are the 408 and 438. So in total, this is the big picture summary roll-up. So you'll kind of recognize this table because it's going to be reflected as a Table A attachment to the budget ordinance itself. So when we talk about the total two-year budget, we're looking at that $312.6 million. And so these numbers walk through the different categories. So the first category we'll talk about as we go through that first line, general fund, the ARPA fund, and the street fund are all rolled into that general operations. These numbers are what's reflected in that Table A, looking at the beginning balance of $44.7 million, the revenues, the expenditures, and resulting ending fund balance of $24.9 million. That's what's in the current budget proposal for the general operations. We'll come back to that $24.9 million later in the presentation, just so you can see where that's linking up with the other factors that we've discussed at the various workshops. Again, the internal services, just taking that category out separately so you can see how that's reflected in the table. Those are funded by transfers from the general fund. So you're not, they need to be shown in this chart because we're looking at the total appropriations of the budget, but they're a transfer from the general fund is how it's not unique revenue that comes into those funds. Then capital is grouped into those three funds I just talked about, 301, 302, and 340. And so that's the $56 million in expenditures that we talked about at the October 4th meeting. Then the last category is the stormwater funds and their numbers as they relate. So in total, beginning fund balance, $116 million, and in total, ending fund balance in all categories of funds, $60 million is what's currently in the budget proposal. And that adds up to the 312.6. So the way the government accounting works on this is they take the beginning fund balance column, they add that to the revenues, and that totals 312, and that needs to balance with the expenditures plus the ending fund balance columns. So that's where you're seeing 312 in both of those, and that's the accounting for that balance picture. I would note that expenditure and revenue columns that are shown in this table do include those internal fund transfers because they're required to include those. So that's movement between the funds. So it's not necessarily new revenue or new expenditures. It's a revenue or expense to that fund, using the fund as the lens for that. So that's the explanation of the total picture. So just looking now at the general operating funds, and we looked at this when we were going through the workshops. So for 2023-24, the point here is the double-digit portions of, so, you know, what are the major pieces of the operating funds? That's kind of the question that this pie chart answers. So you have fire and emergency services, police services, public works, and parks and rec are the double-digit ones, and then the others are listed there as well as the percentage of those general operating funds. You may recall we looked at the operating funds by department as well, and we had each of the department directors come up and explain the the differences between the 21-22 budget as compared to the 23-24 proposal, and those differences were outlined here. We tracked through those, and we had the explanation by department that we went through. This chart has been updated after those different workshops as we move through. So what I'm pointing out there on the right is the proposal to use ARPA funding for police services. So that was a decision as we were coming through those workshops and making those adjustments. Another adjustment was the EFR cost that resulted from that presentation that they gave, and it was a little bit higher than their original cost that was included in the budget. So that's been rolled in, so in this by department view. And then the last one was the pavement management funding. So we're going to talk about that a little further because there was a whole split of what goes in operating and what goes into capital. So this is the operating piece that you're looking at here on the operations side. So we also discussed the approved additions to the base budget, and just briefly touching on those, the workshop itself went into all of these as well. For the 23-24 budget period, there was 5.5 million, and it was in each of these different departments. We also looked at those additions in a second category of what portion of those additions was one-time costs and what were recurring costs. So of those 5.5 million, 2.27 or 2.3 million was one-time related, and 3.2 million was recurring costs of that 5.5. So then there were some other items as we moved through, so I'm just going to briefly hit on those. So we already talked about the property tax levy increase of 1%. That is included in the current city manager budget, just so you know that's in there. The other things that are included are the FTEs, and we're going to briefly show you that chart again. We'll walk through each one of these, the ARPA money, the Climate and Sustainability Program reallocation. So each of these 7 items we're going to walk through briefly just as a reminder of these are the things that were covered in the workshop. So the second item there first, FTEs. So we talked about the 23 budget proposal, the 24 budget proposal, and then together, so adding 9 and 1 and 24, 10 total FTE count going to 149.5 by the end of the 23-24 period. So that was FTEs. The next area was COVID relief revenue funding and use. So we talked about COVID relief funds that were carrying over those 300,000. We also talked about the ARPA fund and a proposal for how that would be used in this budget process. And so that was the recommendation that's rolled into the city manager's budget to use that for the police services contract. Then we also talked about the DEIB program and reallocation of that budget in the climate sustainability program. So those allocations, that 150-150 split that resulted, those are included in the city manager's budget. So those are already in that packet that was included that we're reviewing and having a public hearing on tonight. I mentioned earlier about the pavement management funding program. You may recall when we got to that section and Audrey was providing an overview of pavement management program funding and how much was included in the operating portion of the budget versus the capital. So those are the boxes off to the left. There's an operating portion of the budget. I'll call out that Klahani overlay and other streets selected, that 2.5 million each year, so the 5 million in total is the piece that's going into the operating budget. And those other line items below, the East Shore Lane reconstruction and the other streets, those are in the capital budget, the 340 fund. So as we moved through those different workshops, this was the split that was done with related to the pavement management program funding. So rolling this together. So this is the summary chart on the general fund. Okay, so we're looking just at the general fund. Recall that 39.3 million is after we take out that 5.5 million reserve. So that's where we started. So if you're looking at the other chart that had 44 million, that's why it showed 44 million in the table A, less the 5 million, you start at 39.3. And then we walked through each of these elements in the workshops. So we had a base budget, decreased to afford the base budget, largely economic increases of 3.3 million. Then there was the one-time transfer out of the general fund to fund some general facilities capital projects, primarily the Fire Station 82. So that was the 10.9 million amount. There was the 5.5 million of additions that we just talked about previously as a reminder on that slide. And then there was the ARPA revenue for 4.4 million. That's a revenue, so it's coming in, helping from a fund balance perspective, helps that picture. And then pavement management, so just the operating portion, because we're just showing the general fund here. So that's that 2.5 million each year, 5 million for the 2-year period. So if you just add up the numbers in the left-hand column, you're at 19 million remaining as available balance, and then that is going to equate to 25 million if you add back the reserve. So the 25 million is that general fund, ending fund balance that's going to show up that we reflected in that earlier slide. So additional note on this, we've added, this is more of kind of an analytical note, we'll call out. So if you just take strictly the revenues minus the expenses in this equation, and you look at a 1% property tax, and then the green highlights are those recurring cost elements. So recall we looked at that, the 5.5 additions and split that out into one-time versus recurring. So this is picking up that split out, okay? So those 5.5 million, 2.3 million was one-time, 3.2 is recurring. So the green highlights are showing you that 3.2 million plus the other 3.3 million that was from just your base cost increase. That's a 6.5 million recurring cost that's part of this process. So we're tracking that because, as you know, looking forward beyond this budget period is also important and prudent to do, right? So that's why we're looking at this and highlighting which elements are one-time versus recurring. So that's where the resulting fund balance position is for the general fund. A reminder on the capital side. So this is the slide from the capital presentation where we walk through general government capital, parks capital, transportation capital. Total expenditures on capital, 56 million in the 23-24 period. We talked about all of the projects that was associated with at that October session as well. And we also went through stormwater. So Audrey talked about stormwater utility, the 408 fund, the 438 fund, that's the operating and capital sides of stormwater. Reminder that the rate increase is what's funding this. So the stormwater rates are expected to increase 6.25% per year. And that's what's assumed in these rate revenues that are reflected. Now the capital projects that are stormwater capital, that's what's highlighted here. Those 3 major projects, George Davis Creek Fish Passage, Lewis Thompson Road Tightline Project, and the property acquisition. Those are their large stormwater capital projects that are funded by those same rate revenues, that's 6.25. You may recall that was the enhanced level of service, so there was 3 different options that we were looking at when we were looking at stormwater. So base, enhanced, and optimal. We went with the enhanced package, and that resulted in that 6.25% rate increase proposal. So we've walked through all of our categories now. We had the general operations, the capital, the stormwater. Just a reminder on the calendar, we're going to have the public hearing tonight on the 23-24 budget, and we already talked about the 23 property tax ordinance. On November 15th, it's the recommendation you continue the public hearing so we can continue to receive any public comment or input on both the property tax and the budget prior to potential council passage. So at this time, I would turn it back over to the mayor to open up the public hearing.
Great. Thank you, Aaron and Chris and Lori, for continuing to explain it to me like I'm 5. I would love any comments or questions from council. I know we do also have our 2s and 3s, and thank you for setting that up so council can really get more of that deep dive. I know we have a lot of questions for you all, so I think that will also really help. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, Aaron, can you go back to your slide 10 real quick? I'm sorry. You go so fast, and you know how I like the numbers. As you're going back, one of my questions, so the pavement management, you didn't include that in the recurring expenses, but isn't that a recurring expense that we need to really do that every year?
So interesting, yeah, so the 2.5 million, this is what's, so each biennial period, you're making that decision, right?
Right.
So it's not, the need is recurring. I would agree with you there. It's what you choose to fund in each budget is what is up to council to
So
elect to
the
do.
6.5 that you call out are things that we, if we make these decisions, we're kind of, for lack of a better term, we're stuck with those. Like, those are commitments we're making, and we can't, like, if we redecided that, it would have to be that we would have to take something away as opposed to the pavement management. We sort of reaffirm. Is that sort of how you're looking at that?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at it as the pavement management is more of the one-time, because you're making a one-time investment in each of those years of 2.5 million in 23, 2.5 million in 24. And the recurring ones I'm highlighting because that's usually something we're adding to the budget that we know is going to recur in the future budget biennium. So typically staffing decisions would be related to that, or if there's an ongoing program cost that we know is going to recur.
Great, but that was slide 16. Can you go to slide 10? Sorry.
Oh, I don't have the slide numbers.
Oh, sorry, they're up in the upper right. That's how I kind of caught it really
okay.
quickly.
Thank you.
There we go. Okay, this one. So this is these recurring versus one time. How did you, maybe you can just send this to us so I can, I guess, go through this. I'm not sure I can sort through all of this on the dais in terms of the one time versus the recurring in each of these categories.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we can definitely follow up with that. And just for the general public, this was part of the packet that was previously, it's a lot of detailed information, but we're happy to provide that.
Okay. Oh, was this in the packet and I just missed the presentation? I'm sorry.
Not in tonight's packet, in the workshop when we covered these back on October 4th.
Oh,
But we can, yeah.
Got it. Okay, and then just my overall concern, right? I know you guys have been responding to all of our requests, and I really appreciate that. But, you know, as we head into a period where there are clearly macroeconomic headwinds, which I think we're all quite optimistic will clear up in the coming months, we don't know exactly when. So my biggest concern is making a commitment to 9 additional FTEs without a plan for additional recurring revenue in a period with economic headwinds. It feels to me like if we're going to make such a commitment, we should at least have a plan for how we would get that revenue. So one of the things I would love to see us consider is for those bodies that, you know, those people that may already be here under contract or LTE, can we look at continuing those for some short period of time and reassessing if we want to convert them to something of more of a permanent recurring commitment later once we understand either better macroeconomic situations probably and a plan for new recurring revenues to cover those recurring costs. So that would just be my overall feedback on that, is that I just don't want to see us commit to something that we don't have that recurring revenue to pay for. Thanks.
Councilmember Howe.
I'm probably going to be echoing what Councilmember Stewart just said. I was, as I looked at on page 70 of the pre-read of the agenda, and was looking at the staff, I wondered if there was a phased approach. Was this an assumption that, you know, as of January 1, they would all start? I'm just curious as to what the timing would be for the FTEs that are coming in, the ones that would, the remaining positions, not the ones that actually have some kind of, you know, balancing revenue, but the 6 remaining open slots. I wasn't quite sure when their start date was and if it could be staggered. I mean, I know how painful that is to actually hear, because I know you would love to have a full and complete staff on day 1 to just see what that would feel like for once. But I have to ask the question.
Yeah, so for what's included in the budget, so we budget January 1st as if that position is filled on January 1st. So that's the way the budget authorization is put together when we authorize that.
Thank you, that's what I assumed.
However, Councilmember, I think I would say that for those positions that are new or there's no one currently sitting in them on a limited term position, that there is no possible way we could hire somebody on January 1st. We won't have the budget authority until that time period, and then there would obviously be a rollout time. Our HR staff is amazing, but they can't do it all at once, and so there would be a lag time regardless before we could staff up for those the other potential positions, and that's obviously a conversation we could continue to have with council.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
Thank you, Aaron. So there's a lot of numbers here, and thank you for agreeing to meet with us in twos and threes so that we can get a better understanding of all of this. I do see our general fund slowly diminishing, and I don't see like actual plans for a financial sustainability plan. And can you give me some clarity, in terms of next steps on some sort of plan?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Aaron is pointing at me. So for those online, Scott McCall, interim city manager, and well, we haven't finalized a contract yet, so I will. I'll be technically correct, since for the budget we have to be. So in terms of our financial sustainability work, we do have some we do have a follow-up process. We're going to be coming back, I think as Aaron noted, I can't remember which meeting it was in, to be honest, with who it was, so I will say it out loud because they're all blurring together, but that once council passes the budget, then we will be able to go back to our financial sustainability model, plug in those inputs, and then be able to continue the conversation and develop that plan for what the options are and how council would like to address it. And I would expect that work will start fairly soon after council has finalized the budget, where then we would come back and finalize the sustainability plan and then an implementation plan moving forward for whatever council decides they want to do, that we would then take that next step to actually implement that. And what that looks like, that's the conversation for the next step. But there is a plan in place, and we do have our same consultants are waiting for us to make our budget decisions to then take the next steps.
So that would include like potential new revenue streams?
That will absolutely be part of the conversation and the optionality that council will be coming back to. If you'll recall, we had that initial conversation with the team back in June. And so once we get through budget, then it will be to talk about what council has comfort and wants to look at different options, and then we can have those more in-depth conversations and have some public meetings as we go through that to get to a point where council can make a decision.
Okay. A couple of council members are talking about keeping some of the staff as LTEs. I would rather cut in other areas. I trust that the recommended positions are truly needed, and I want to ensure that staff is not overburdened in any way doing, more work, double work, regardless. So I do support keeping the recommendation that they be converted, and we look at other avenues if we absolutely have to make those hard decisions. Thank you.
Councilmember Treen.
Aaron, what is the general operating budget for 1 year? 22 million. Is this a 45 million? Cut it in half.
Yeah, so you're looking at your 142 million. Roughly, it's split, but you could have swings that are largely related to that transfer we were talking about for capital. So that's where it's. But for the 2-year period, it's 142 million.
71 million is our, give or take some, our operating budget per year. And our tax revenue from property tax was about 33 million, 34, 35 in 2023. according to your little graph there that you just showed us, or that's in the packet. So,
Yeah,
okay, I'm just trying to look at, okay, so where's all the revenue coming from to pay for our operations? And then I understand that there's the capital part, but I'm looking at sustainability from a lens of if I'm going to have a reoccurring expense of $6.5 million on operations going forward, where am I getting even that $6.5 million if I'm already short 11 million or more? So it's just a thought that I'm having right now. Thanks.
All right. We do have a couple buttons still pushed. I don't know if there were more questions or if anyone else had. Oh, no, you're good. Yeah. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, sorry, on the pavement program, the 5 million for this biennium, do we have 5 million in the current biennium as well for that?
Aaron, while you're looking that up, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that that was one of the council cuts made in the last biennium to not, as council will recall, we have an extraordinarily high PCI rating that is takes a lot of money to try to maintain. And so, excuse me, council chose, I believe, in the last biennium to actually unfund the pavement management program this last round.
So that was unfunded completely? Okay.
So for 21-22, the pavement preservation budget is $4,245,100. Is what the
So 4.2, so we're just increasing it from 4.2 to 5?
well, there's other elements. So the 5 million is in addition to that 228th overlay project. So recall there's other pavement pieces. Maybe I can pull
I'm
up
just
that.
looking at it from the operations side, sorry, not in the capital, just the operations piece.
So recall, this is the pavement on the operating budget. There's that roadway overlay, 228th, that was grant funded. So there's that 1.4 million plus the 529,000 and then the 2.5 million.
Okay.
So that's just the total picture in 23 and 24. So the total for all of those elements, 6.9 million in the
Okay.
23-24 period.
And last time it was 4.2?
Right.
Okay. And then my other clarification, just again on the employees, we're not, well, at least I wasn't suggesting that we not honor the requests. It's more that we not convert LTE or contractor positions to FTE positions until we have a plan to pay for those. So that gives us, we still have the staff, we still provide the support to staff, but we aren't committing ourselves in that recurring commitment bucket just yet until we have the plan on how we would pay for that. So just to clarify that, the heads would potentially still get funded, just in a different way. Thanks.
Yeah, just adding on to that, I believe Scott and I were chatting today, perhaps you all bringing us, or even in our 2s and 3s, chatting about what LTEs are actually filled right now. I don't know if all of them are filled. So maybe, just looking at converting the ones that are actually just filled LTEs to FTEs. I know that you also mentioned there could be a union conflict eventually for like that serial intermittent job. So I think that would be another thing that we would love feedback and help on.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think ultimately it's also a retention and recruitment issue at some point. So I appreciate Councilmember Stewart's, I understand where she's coming from. And obviously we will work with council to try to come up with the best alternative to sort that out.
All right, do we have anything else from council? I think we're all scheduled up, I hope, to do those 2s and 3s. I think that'll be invaluable. Did you have anything else, Aaron?
So we just opened the public hearing for the budget.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Mayor, if I could really quickly, I also want to say that for council, as questions come in and we have conversations, we will be trying to answer the broad questions in we've been doing it's more of a spreadsheet, but as the questions come in, doing answers and then trying to make those available to everyone so everyone can see what the questions and the answers are. And we'll make sure to get that posted and updated so everyone can track along if they so choose with us as we go through this process through till the 15th.
Yeah, and thank you for doing that. Super helpful to have it in one place, our questions and answers. All right, so I'll now be opening the public hearing. I'm not sure if we have any public comment in the room or online, and this will be open until the 15th of November, so the same like the property tax hearing. Please feel free, email, and comment.
There's no one signed up here, but you could ask if there's anybody in
Does anyone
attendance.
else, does anyone have public comment? Mary? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm green. So I'm going to refer to this photo again. It's the one with the bird cages in it, which is the bottom part of George Davis Creek. So my name's Mary Wichter. I've been in Sammamish 22 years. I've been a watershed resident between Zaccoose and George Davis Creek. And this public hearing is continuing to speak for the salmon because they can't be here, and we need to really think about it. You can't save them if you're smothering them. So I did want to thank Tom O'Dell, as former mayor and council member, for calling in. I agree pretty much 100% with everything he says as well. We are not in conflict there. In fact, when this started, I was stormwater and he was salmon, and I said, hey, our stories really go together. There is one point I would like to conflict with him on. He said things can be engineered for sediment transport. And I wanted to talk about that. Tom's an engineer and I'm a software engineer, and we're both techies. But salmon are multi-function. It's not like a simple thing. So at the most recent Kokanee Work Group meeting, there was a guy, Alan Quinn, who's from the city of Issaquah, and they were talking about what they do there. Whenever there's high flows, they have side channels. Those are kind of like a runaway truck ramp where it would take the water and the sediment. And then the other one's a backwater channel. I don't know how to explain that to you, but if the water tries to rush down too much and it doesn't have a place to go, it's a safe place that it could kind of like back up in. I don't really believe, I'm not aware that there would be an opportunity to do that on George Davis Creek because it's a ravine and it is kind of more of a straightened channel than that. And then there are people, including a former president of the watershed company, who is actually retired, but there's emails going back and forth between people, and I'll just read part of it. The sediment load on George Davis Creek looks quite dramatic. And then he says that the sediment control would need to occur upstream of the ravine. He says, while often used by public works, inline sediment traps are enough for fish. Just about everything imaginable goes wrong for fish because they're designed to go into a low energy spot to capture sediment. And if they aren't maintained, they cause localized flooding. And if they are over-scalped, they cause loss of downstream spawning gravels, channel down cutting, and bank failure, completely plugging the sediment lower down. And then he continues on that sediment transport and its interruption is poorly understood and very difficult to manage, especially for public works departments whose main focus is roads, and the water and sewer are handled by the water district, but also stormwater flood management. So he says pushing integrated management of public works, parks, trails, and flow bypasses remains an abstract idea. So even people that are really in the know, there's not one easy solution for it. I don't want to say I'm against George Davis Creek, but what I don't want you to do is fund something, build it, and then invite the fish there, trap them, and they will die. We just don't have enough fish to spend that. And it takes 3 years for salmon to go through their life cycle, so you won't even see results right away. Thank you, and sorry I was...
Thanks so much. No problem. All right, do we have anyone else online?
Is there anybody in attendance that would like to give public comment? Please raise your hand. I see we have one attendee that would like to speak. Paul Stickney.
Hello, City Council. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. I sent in a comment today on the budget, and I'm just going to go over a couple high points on that comment. With upping full-time employees to a proposed 148 to 149, I think we should take a real hard look at contracts the city does. I'm not an expert at the police and fire contract. I've heard other people say those should be scrutinized. I'm not one who says that because I'm not involved in those two that much, so I really can't say. But I heard discussions during the process that staff could potentially take some of the load on consultants. But I was a little bit troubled by the transmittal letter about the budget that talks about this budget continues the city's long-standing, practice of contracting for major services rather than delivering services directly through city staff, which sure seemed to me with such a significant increase in FTEs that some of our contract spending could be going down. And I'm going to jump to a comment at the end of the written document I sent in today that some history is important. Just before Sammamish annexed Klahani in 2016, I think the number of FTEs in the city was roughly 72. Well, Klahani added 4,000 housing units to our city, a significant bunch of housing. They were mostly built from early or late 1980s to the mid 1990s. So they existed. We added roughly 4,000 houses as a city. Interpolating 72 into the new number, adding them would have been about 90 FTEs. Well, here's where it gets a little bit interesting. Since 2016, I estimate Sammamish has allowed about 1,800 housing units to be added that started in 2016 or later. I didn't do the actual math, but if we added 18 jobs for 4,000 housing units, this is adding roughly not quite 60 more FTEs for 1,800 units. It just doesn't seem to add up. So anyway, take a look at the information I sent in today. Hope it's helpful. I think we should scale back some spending until we find revenue first. Have a good evening, and thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, should have asked you. Yeah, thank you so much, Lita. So that concludes at least the public comment for today. So just a reminder that both public hearings are open until the 15th of November. Next, we're going to move on to new business. I'm hoping everyone will be okay with a break while we transition until 8:55. Does that sound all right? Cool. Okay, break till 8:55. Thank you. Are we rolling? Are we good, Lita? Back there? Okay, cool. All right, welcome back. Thanks, everybody. Sorry, we're a minute late. We're moving on to new business. So first up, we have a workshop, proposed development agreement with Brownstone West. So we have, David, are you taking lead on this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we have staff and some guests from the STCA. So take it away.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. David Pyle, Department of Community Development. Tonight, we have a workshop for you on a proposed development agreement between the Sammamish Town Center Associates and the City of Sammamish related to the Brownstone West subdivision and the Lower Sammamish Commons Park access. We have with us Kelly Hildy, who's our Deputy Director, and we have with us in the screen, Steve Ruse, who is counsel for STCA, as well as Peter Brennan and Matt Samwick of STCA. We also have our city attorney, Carrie Sand, who's here and available to answer any questions on the development agreement. And what we're going to do is provide a brief presentation First the city, then STCA. Then we'll open it up to the council for questions. This being a workshop, we'll be coming back to you with a public hearing proposed for December 6th. Thank you. Kelly?
And I am being promoted so I can share my screen. So give me a quick second. Closer. Okay, so sure. Okay, let's see. There we go. It's doing its thing. Give it a second. So as Director Pyle mentioned, the purpose of tonight's workshop is to seek direction from City Council to inform language in the development agreement, which will be presented for public hearing and action at the December 6th regular meeting. I will start by providing a brief overview of the scope of work described in the development agreement, the approval process, timeline, and next steps. I will then hand it off to Matt Samwick, who will provide further details on the proposed modifications. Afterwards, we'll open it up for questions and further discussion. In 2019, STCA submitted a preliminary subdivision application for Brownstones West. The Brownstones West project is located in the southwest quadrant of the city's planned town center subarea on parcels zoned TCB and TCC. After extensive review by and collaboration with city staff, the Brownstones West preliminary subdivision was approved by the city's hearing examiner on May 2nd of this year. The approved subdivision creates 38 residential lots, 3 new street segments, open space areas, and a public access trail and stormwater facilities. Concurrent with the Brownstone West project, STCA also submitted a unified zone development plan application in the fall of 2019. The Sammamish Town Center Southwest Quadrant project, also known as the STCA UZDP project, is a proposed mixed-use development with 348 residential units and approximately 82,000 square feet of commercial space in the TCA1 zone. Included in the STCA UZDP project is the Brownstone East, a proposed preliminary subdivision that includes 48 residential units. The proposed development agreement outlines modifications to the Brownstones West preliminary subdivision, as well as the public benefit associated with the modification as proposed by STCA. Modifications include removing 223rd Avenue Southeast and replacing the right-of-way with a common open space. This modification decreases impervious surfaces, adds additional open space, provides for a new public trail connection, and promotes innovative neighborhood design. Adjusting the building setback from an alley. This modification addresses a gap in the development regulations and promotes efficient use of land. Consolidating stormwater facilities. This modification increases the stormwater vault capacity to serve a portion of the Southwest Quadrant project, consolidates 7 public-private vaults down to 2 public vaults, and reduces the city's long-term maintenance costs. Reducing tree retention requirements. This modification promotes the right tree in the right place, reduces future requests for nuisance and hazardous tree removal, focuses on replanting an appropriate urban design landscape, and provides a substantially greater tree canopy. And lastly, realigning Southeast 6th Street. This modification will shift park-related traffic flows from 222nd Place Southeast to 224th Avenue Southeast creating a new signature entry for Lower Sammamish Commons Park and adding a secondary access drive to the Lower Sammamish Commons parking lot. To implement these modifications, a development agreement under RCW 3670B170 is required, as the proposed design changes affect the city park property and require city approval of Public Works standards deviation and departures. More specifically, the development agreement as proposed would authorize the Public Works Director to approve a deviation from the Public Works standards allowing townhomes to front open space rather than a street. Authorize the Community Development Director to approve a minimum primary structure building separation of 40 feet, 20-foot alley centerline setback along Alley A, B, C, and D for the preliminary subdivision and the future Brownstone East subdivision. Authorize the Community Development Director to approve STCA's proposal to remove up to 33% of the retained trees, a total of 7, in favor of replanting an appropriately designed urban landscape, and approve proposed changes to the access to Lower Sammamish Commons Park through a phased approach facilitating the straightening of Southeast 6th Street. Shortly after City Council directed the interim city manager to negotiate a development agreement with STCA on September 6, STCA submitted revised site plans, technical reports, and specific questions under the city's pre-development services process. This is a fee-based process allowing staff to review the documents for conformance with the city's development regulations and standards. Staff representing the Departments of Community Development, Public Works, Parks, Recreation, and Facilities, as well as staff from the Sammamish Plateau Water District and Eastside Fire and Rescue have provided initial review comments that will assist STCA with preparing revised application materials to be submitted upon approval of the development agreement. To implement the modifications proposed by STCA will require City Council review and approval of a development agreement with a non-project SEPA determination, staff review and approval of a site development construction permit, staff review and City Council approval of the final plat, and staff review and approval of building permits. Following tonight's workshop, the city will notice a non-project SEPA threshold determination on November 21st, which will be followed by a 14-day comment period. On December 6th, City Council will hold a public hearing, consider public comment, and deliberate on the proposed development agreement before taking action. And for those who are interested in providing public comment, instructions on how to do so are described on this slide. And that includes my portion of tonight's presentation. So with that, Matt, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, it's good to be sitting face to face with all of you. We haven't had the opportunity to do so in quite some time. So Mayor Clark, Deputy Mayor Lamb, council members, and I get to say soon-to-be city manager McCall, even though it's not, is that technically correct? Okay, fair enough. And fellow citizens of Sammamish, we consider ourselves kind of a de facto citizen of Sammamish, as we've been here for quite some time, and we are pleased and privileged to be in this community. I thought it would be appropriate, given that we are now back face-to-face, to just bring a few of you up to speed on the history that has occurred since 2014. We arrived in 2014 and surveyed this town center plan. We started on an aggregation process to acquire the land and did so over the course of the next 5 years. So our first contract was signed in January of 2015. Our last closing for the major group of land that we purchased occurred in August of 2019. We recently bought one more piece of property to fill in what we called a donut hole south of 4th and west of 228th. We sit here tonight hoping to collaborate. I can report that in the recent weeks we have received a lot of attention from staff, so we are very thankful for that. We are thankful for council's authorization of this development agreement, and we are, again, privileged to participate in a workshop in which we can chat out loud and balance community interests with the development goals that are in the town center plan to come out with hopefully the best outcome, optimal outcome possible. That can only happen through great input from all the constituencies that will participate not only in this workshop and this limited scope development agreement, but also over time for future development agreements as we advance the city's interests on behalf of the citizens and everyone else who will eventually enjoy the public benefits of the town center while also enjoying the enhanced housing options, the affordable housing choices, and the retail and commercial interests that will be advanced because of a great plan that was crafted over a decade ago. As we came about to finish our aggregation, we then filed an application in 2019. And what's before you tonight is a slight modification to an approval that we received some 3 years later, approximately, on that plat. We had gone through a very rigorous process for the plat. And after it was approved, we approached council and staff about a few changes, minor changes, that we felt might be beneficial for everyone concerned to bring about a better outcome than the one that was approved. We can certainly proceed on the one that was approved, but we're hopeful to take the time to set the table here to have a limited scope development agreement to make those beneficial changes and start the process of talking out loud about the town center to bring about that great results that I talked about. I won't take up any more time, council time and airtime here. Kelly did a great job of explaining why we are here and why we think those minor modifications are necessary to bring about a better result. I would like to stop after introducing Peter Brennan, who's our Vice President of Entitlements, who has done an amazing job of lifting here to get this together with staff in front of you today. So I will turn it back over to council, and we look forward to answering these questions and any questions over the next number of years to bring about a great town center. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Council, open it up. I did have one clarification for the December 6th public hearing. How long will that be open? I mean, I guess we can also decide, but.
It will most likely open and close the same night.
The 6th,
So,
okay.
Yeah, so there'll be a comment period as part of the SEPA process that will
Perfect.
run up to the 5th. And then we will be able to report out on any comment received to the council as part of the public hearing, in addition to the verbal testimony and written testimony options for people to deliver comments on the night of December 6th.
Cool, thank you. Councilmember Howe?
Thank you, Mayor. I think this question is for Carrie. I'd like to understand what is the benefit to having an agreement, a development agreement?
So we looked at whether it was even needed because we think that these modifications are minor enough that they could have been administratively approved. We discussed it internally and found that the benefit to having a development agreement would be the open, transparent process, including the requirement for a public hearing. And that is required by state law. In RCW 3670B200, a public hearing is required. Again, we just wanted it to be as open and transparent of a process as possible with the greatest amount of public participation.
Thank you for that. And I have one question. I'm assuming that a lot of these they're very loose plans at this point. Like right now you're thinking vaults, for example, but that could shift, couldn't it, or not?
I haven't explored the possibilities of how it would shift. I think what you see in front of you is the final iteration of the site planning. There are many, many permits that have to be gathered before we would do anything, but we sit in front of council tonight and the citizens of Sammamish to start a workshop to make sure we get input from council as to the things that we are proposing here.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
I had a couple of questions. Well, first off, I appreciate the design modifications. I think they definitely improve sort of the visual of if I imagine myself standing on Southeast 4th, the green space is much more inviting than it was before, before you had a road. So I definitely appreciate that. I had a question regarding the parking, and I think, David, you mentioned that about overflow parking. I didn't see that in the renderings. Was there any sort of resolution in terms of parking and guest parking?
Hi. Yeah, I can answer that. So we looked at the parking, and what was a benefit of creating the park space there was that we now no longer have an intersection. So we made up a lot of additional parking in those spaces, and then the efficiency of Southeast 6th then aligning straight also added additional parking. So we actually lost no on-street parking, and we actually think when the design is done, we may actually find that might be a gain of a space or two.
Okay, so we lost the street where the green space is, but because 6th Street was improved, there's kind of even Stevens in terms of parking?
Yeah, we have no net loss, and we think there might be actually a gain once we finalize design.
Okay. And I did have another question regarding, I think it's the non-SEPA, I'm not even sure what that is. Is the EIS required for every project, or did the overall town center EIS cover all the projects?
So the overall EIS provides some coverage. It's a document of reference. However, we do need to do individual project level State Environmental Policy Act review for projects. This is considered a non-project action because this does not actually cause development to happen. This merely facilitates or gets us to development. So there's a different SEPA process used here. However, the project itself the Brownstones West did go through SEPA, and the UZDP project is also going through SEPA as it's reviewed. We anticipate issuing a SEPA addendum to the SEPA decision that was issued prior on the Brownstones West project to reflect the change in the street. At that point, that doesn't require any sort of hearing or even, according to state law, public notice. We have to work with legal counsel to determine the best path there when we get to that point. However, this includes a SEPA non-project action. So we're working with legal counsel now to map out exactly how that works, what the noticing requirements are, and we anticipate that would be issued on, I think, November 21st. Yep.
Okay, thanks, David.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Carrie and staff and everyone involved in the decision to make this a development agreement and a really public process. I think that's really important. I think the biggest challenge we have today is, kind of the fear of the unknown, and getting the information out is really great. One question I can imagine coming up, right, is the one change here, reduce the tree retention requirements, right? We really do love our trees here in Sammamish, but as I understand it, while we might take out some extra trees, aren't we actually going to get like an 8-to-1 recovery on those trees? And can you talk about that?
I have to refer to the development agreement, but I do believe that is an 8-to-1 replacement ratio for those 7 trees. That's correct. Yes. So we do get more trees as a result of that.
And just to clarify for the public, and we may not know this yet, and that's okay, but do we know where those trees would go? Do we know like what kinds of trees they will be, or is that all still TBD?
To be determined. That we'd have that information when the site development permit is resubmitted. So we would have the trees identified and located as part of that permit application.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. And I appreciate it looked nicer to me, but when the design expert says that it's a much better design, that makes me feel even better. So thank you for that.
Carrie?
I feel like this is really lawyerly of me to do, but for anybody that wants to read it, it's in 3.1.3 is the tree retention provision. It starts on page 144 out of 294 of your packet and continues on to page 145. That's why I wanted to tell people the specific section if they're interested. 3.1.3.
Okay, I don't have any, Councilmember Trine.
So let me see if I understand this right. Currently, we would be, the city would get roadway, a plan, stormwater system that would be to manual specs, 10 single-family homes, 28 townhome units, for a total of 38 total dwelling units, correct?
That is correct.
That's in, for reference, that's in 2.1. Why the need, or I don't understand why there's an introduction in 2.2 of the UZDP. What is that adding to or helping?
Yeah, so there's an intersection of two projects that's occurring here. And I don't know if you can toggle back to the slide that with the animation that showed it. To the west, you have a project called the Brownstone West, and that is a alley-loaded project with 2 rows of housing, basically. Then you had what was prior known as 223rd, and then on the other side of 223rd, there was a trail that was going to be built as part of Brownstone West. You can see that there, kind of right along that dotted line. And then immediately to the east in blocks 3 and 4, so those circles with a number, those are block numbers, and that's one way for us to help recognize where we are in the town center and orient ourselves geographically. So blocks 3 and 4 are part of the UZDP application in conjunction with blocks 5, 6, and 7. However, the UZDP is providing sort of that master plan overview of how blocks 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 fit together. Once that UZDP is approved, then that will result in 2 separate projects under the umbrella of the UZDP moving forward. The Brownstone East project, which is a subdivision in blocks 3 and 4, and then the commercial site development project, or the commercial project, the mixed-use project, if you will, in blocks 5, 6, and 7. So what we're looking at doing here is addressing some design changes that are desirable for Brownstone West that will also pull in the future project of Brownstone East, and will help it mesh up and be for some consistency across Brownstone West and Brownstone East for that cohesion that we're looking for in the design.
So maybe you're making my point, or a point that I want to make at some point, but you're saying in 2.3 then that this is a minor modification with public benefits. Well, how can the residents of Sammamish that I represent, how can we be sure of that benefit?
So the benefit primarily pertains to elements of the project that were identified as part of Brownstone West,
which is
223rd and the trail being converted to an open space with a trail, and the straightening of 6th. Where the Brownstone East comes into play is that there is a benefit of consolidating the stormwater system in that now vacated 223rd converted to park space, and putting a consolidated vault there. It's a lot easier to and more cost effective to operate and maintain stormwater facilities when they're consolidated, as opposed to having 7 or 8 vaults, reducing that number down to 2 for the purpose of visiting, maintaining, inspecting, et cetera. There's a certain efficiency there. And it also follows with the town center's objective of consolidation of regional stormwater.
Yeah, I'd like to get to that in just a second, but right now, so in 2.31, when you're converting a roadway to a park open space, it pretty much equates to a benefit to the residents of 3/4 of an acre, correct? According to the information?
So it would be a private open space. The trail, however, would be a public trail that would meander through that. The benefit there is that it's not asphalt. There's a significant reduction of impervious surface. There's also a reduction of long-term maintenance. We talked tonight about our overlay program. Well, that's 2 blocks less of street to overlay. The park space itself, or the open space itself, would be maintained by the HOA, the future owners HOA of both Brownstone West and Brownstone East. And it also provides a lot more opportunity at the north end to plant meaningful clusters of trees and restore the area with a designed landscape that's appropriate for that type of space.
So the benefit to the residents, besides reducing asphalt, which is a good idea, I'll get to the stormwater in just a bit, but is 3/4 of an acre with some connectivity of trails, and the developer gets 5 additional houses.
There are no additional housing units proposed with this development agreement as compared to the
Then where do I
Brownstone
read
West
that there's
subdivision.
44 total houses then? 43, excuse me. Yeah, 43. So in 4.24, one, you're going from 38 to 43. That's 5 dwelling units, and then you're going to have, it's going to provide a possibility of 44 parking space or an additional 1 parking spot. So the benefit to, okay. So what I think in 4.2 or 2.4 we got to change the word from significant to either minimal or marginal. There's not a significant benefit to the residents for 3.4 acres of open space to give the developer 5 additional dwelling units and increasing street parking, which some people would consider that not a benefit. Others see it as a benefit. I've talked to both sides on that one. So it's not, one, I don't believe that this is a minor change. And the second is that it's not a significant benefit to the community. I mean, so how many trees are in this Brownstone West land currently? 110, maybe? You're going to leave me 14 now instead of?
There's 82 trees.
82 trees, and you're going to leave 7?
So 25% are required to be, is part of the code to be retained. So that puts us at 21 trees for retention, and we are requesting 14.
So I get 14 trees. Okay, sweet. Again, not a significant benefit then. It's minimal, marginal even at times. On 2.42, I could say more about that one, but I'm just leave it there, right? Right now, yes, Councilmember Stewart is right. When you're talking about we love our trees, it's really disappointing to see how many are going to come down, and then to not even save the 21 but go down to 14 is, in my opinion, unacceptable. It's not for the common good. 2.42, what do the neighbors in Lancaster think of the new signature entry to the Lower Sammamish Commons? Have we looked at that termination of 224th Avenue Southeast and Southeast 6th Street and talked to the neighbors about, is it Lancaster neighborhood? Maybe I got the wrong neighborhood, but have we talked to the neighbors down there about that roadway?
I think you're referring to the Balmoral
Yeah, the Balmoral,
subdivision. We have not heard from anyone from the Balmoral subdivision regarding this proposal, so I can't speak to that.
Okay.
I do want to clarify, just for the record, the modifications to the approved preliminary subdivision does not increase the residential density. The numbers you're referring to under 2.41, those 44 parking spaces are on-street parking. They're not driveway spaces. So just again to clarify, there is no increase in residential density.
But it does say that it would promote innovative residential design by allowing approximately 43 townhouses. Am I missing that?
What it's saying is that 43 units will front the park. So that's 21 from Brownstones West, which is existing, and 22 from Brownstones East, which would be the future application. So if you look at the design, the park has units on both sides. The park sits in Brownstones West application, which has 21 units to the west of the park, and on the east side of the park would be 22 units that would be part of Brownstones East. Total being
Getting you
43 units that front the park. It's not 43 units for Brownstones West. Brownstones West remains 38 units.
Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I also add one more clarification? And that's with regard to engaging community members, property owners down 222nd. So what this project is doing is it's actually closing off the parking lot access from 222nd and moving it to 224th as a primary access point, which will reduce the amount of traffic going down 222nd. So if anything, the neighbors down that road will notice a reduction in trips coming down their street, as the primary entrance point will be shifted to the new road that is being built with this project. So we've identified that is a more appropriate location for the park entrance than where it currently is located, which is right at the entrance to a single-family residential neighborhood. So having a driveway of that type is probably better suited adjacent to townhome type development at the terminus of 224th.
So how do we rectify, or how do I in my head, so thank you, by the way, thank you. On 2.4.3, the term regional stormwater facility, your definition is that the facilitates that serve more than one property. I get that. But regional, that's a big word, big area. So to me, it seems like really this is a regional facility. We're putting in 2 vaults underground under a park-like open space. And that's regional? I mean, or is that more of like, could you convince me that another term is more appropriate? Like 2 subdivision stormwater facility?
So we spent a lot of time talking about this term as well. And we came back to town center plan at 68. So if you read into the town center plan, it's defined in the town center plan.
Yeah.
And this facility as proposed, we feel meets the definition that is listed there on page 68 of the town center plan. It is important to note that this does, if you could toggle back to the page, the slide that shows the UZDP as well. It is important to note that this does pull stormwater from, and I don't know, I could let Pete jump in here. Is it block 5 and 6, I believe?
Yes, it'll be blocks 5, 6, and then the block that would be west of the notch. So that, and then you have 3, 4, 5, 6, and the block west of the notch, which was a future block 8.
So really it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then block 8.
Yes.
Which constitutes a fairly large area, multiple projects that are all feeding into this one system. That's why we ultimately came to the conclusion that it fits in the definition of regional stormwater.
Any chance that it was open water pond with a fountain and trails around that leads to a new entry to the park? I mean, now you're talking about something that would benefit the community, beautifies it. That to me seems like a benefit to the city. I think a resident spoke to that today in public comment, but when I look at stormwater facilities, no one on this staff and the experts don't tell, no one's convinced me yet that the vaults are better than open water or an open system or retention. So until I hear otherwise, I see the fact that I've seen ponds and fountains, and that's beautiful in cities. That's something we could be proud of. So that would be a benefit.
So one of the challenges with that, and I agree that is, a attractive attribute or component to a development. The problem is volume and getting the depth in the pond that's appropriate. We also have heard testimony over the years, and stormwater stewards have brought forward photographs of what they called stormwater jails. And they were basically photos of stormwater ponds, open ponds with large fences around them because of the hazard that larger, deeper facilities present. So in this case, there isn't the ability to create the volume that you need in that limited area, and you have to go deeper, and the safest way to do that is by putting it underground in a vault.
Safest way. Or reduce the size of the development.
So that's another question and different conversation.
David, I have like 2 more pages of stuff. So to expedite tonight's meeting, what I think I'd like to do is, because the next one is, the next series of questions for me are dealing with wanting to have the ability to talk honestly about the town center subplan area or sub-area plan. There seems to be several terms that do not reflect the goals and the policies of the town center sub-area plan that currently exists. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got 8 more just on that alone. So what I'd like to do, Mayor, if it's all right with you, is to stop here and just say that I need to meet with staff and that we would, I would like to move this to the December 7th and, public meeting. My hope initially was to move this to the Planning Commission, but that motion didn't even get a second. So, and now you're seeing why. There's a lot to this and a lot of details, and there's a lot of goals and policies that are trying to be met here, and I appreciate that. But I also look as someone who represents the residents of Sammamish that some of these hard questions need to be asked and dealt with so that to be fair to the developer. So when he goes in and he says, yeah, this is what we're going to build, and then being fair to the residents that that's what we're actually going to get. We really don't want to see another project where we don't have connectivity, we don't have stormwater taken care of, and then we're tearing all the trees down, and once you put the concrete buildings up, I can't put the trees back in there without tearing those concrete buildings down. And we already know we're not tearing them down then. Once they go up, they're there, unless they're going to be redeveloped at some point. So I imagine you're not building a project that's going to get torn down in 20 years.
So we do share those concerns and questions, and so we'd be happy to meet with you. Would welcome that. We could set that up through the city manager's office.
Appreciate
I think
that.
the main question tonight is if you fully understand what's in the agreement and how it works, and if you have any questions about how it works and how this might ultimately be implemented over time. There's a section about phasing in here that talks about the changes to the park and how this might affect or work with future decision on Brownstone East, et cetera. So if there are any more questions about that, we'd be happy to answer those as well. We just wanted to make sure that the council's aware of what's in it in its current draft form so that when it comes back on December 6th, we're able to open up with a presentation, open up the public hearing, ask questions, deliberate on it, and if it's appropriate, make a decision on it.
Carrie?
I just wanted to clarify for the council and the public's benefit that, as Kelly stated in her opening overview, the Brownstones West project has already received preliminary subdivision approval. That was received from the hearing examiner process last spring. And what this limited scope development agreement proposes to do is these 3 minor modifications and the associated public benefits for each one of those. So even if this development agreement is not approved, obviously the preliminary subdivision that was approved previously is still an entitlement that STCA can move forward with development. And then I just wanted to point out a couple more things about the public benefits of the so-called regional stormwater facilities. And again, the reason they're called regional, we spent a lot of time talking about this while we were drafting this, is, again, that's consistent with the way that term is defined in the town center plan at page 68. But also, it simplifies the vault configuration from a non-traditional shape to rectangular, and because the city will be responsible for ongoing maintenance of this facility, that makes it easier. Further, it will be located underneath the open space, and so it will have easier access instead of being located under a street, as was originally approved.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Farrell?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to talk about, and Councilmember Treen just brought it up, about the trees that will be cleared from the site in order to make Brownstone happen. I wondered, of the however number of trees are there, are all of those trees as they are they viable trees right now, or do we have a lot of diseased trees in that stand that's there at the moment? Kind of what condition are those trees in at the moment?
Yeah, right now there are, the 82 trees are significant trees that our arborist has reviewed. There was more trees, some were deemed not healthy, and so those are not in the 82 count. So the 82 count sits as healthy trees that are in the significant category.
Okay, thank you. And then I just wondered, Kelly and David, when we go to look at the notch as a like an open space kind of park area, will there be opportunity for the trees that we lose through the Brownstone development that we can do a lot of replanting in the notch and make some kind of a compensation for the loss of those trees, as it were? And I understand we have one of the highest tree retention policies in the state, probably, when we ask 25% of our trees to be retained on a development site. So will we have opportunity in the notch and other places like that to kind of compensate for the loss of those trees, would you say?
So we do require, as a matter of design for this project, that the project design team work with their landscape architect discipline to identify how those trees are planted on their site. So there is a provision in the city's tree retention rules that allows for off-site replanting, but it's only when it's demonstrated that they cannot be accommodated on site. So what we're looking at here is there are that many trees being removed, however, they are being replaced at an advanced ratio. I think, is it the first number is a 1-to-1 ratio, or what is the exact ratio? Do you recall?
It's 8-to-1 is the replacement ratio. So the 7 trees that will be removed are being replaced at 8-to-1. So 56 additional trees on the Brownstone's west site will be.
In addition to the first?
In addition to just the normal landscaping that was approved.
Is there a replacement requirement for those trees that are removed, the 75% that are removed?
I don't believe so.
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, so I like the numbers. So there are 82 trees currently. We're going to end up with 70. And I realize that that's still maybe a net loss of 12, but I'd like to point out that, if we all, well, first of all, this is already approved, right? So this is all about, can we get a benefit to the community? So we'll get a net benefit of 49 trees through this development agreement, just to be clear. And I think that's important because we're looking at how we can do more to enhance our urban tree canopy. So I think that's a great benefit. I also want to point out that, stormwater management is something we've been talking about a lot. So I do appreciate the desire to, as we design these facilities, to make sure that we're doing it in a way that we can make the maintenance more cost effective and efficient, because that is a huge cost to our city in an ongoing maintenance capacity. And I think that's really important. I also know that that's not necessarily part of this agreement, but I know there have been discussions about somewhere in the town center properties to create a potential tree sending site, because we know that throughout the city of Sammamish, we have homes and lots where trees have gotten too big for the lots that they're on. And as residents, if we need to take those out because they're starting to cause damage, we're required to replace them with other significant trees. But if you already have a significant tree that's too big for your lot, you can't always do that safely or easily. And so I think that as we work through these agreements and we have these negotiations, I think there are a lot of opportunities for us to look for ways to enhance our community overall and to provide benefits for residents in a lot of different ways and enhance the environment. So I'm super excited to see more or less impervious surface, more green space, and the fact that we're actually going to close the gap on the number of trees that are going to be lost in total on this property. So I do see that as a fairly significant benefit, and I appreciate all the work. Thank you.
All right, council, do we have anything else? I don't think there is any official motion. It's more of an information gathering or session. Does anyone else have any?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing regarding the 56 replacement trees. It also gives us an opportunity to diversify our urban forest. Right now, we are seeing applications for disease trees coming in, and a lot of that is in response to climate change. And so when we see this new development coming into the city, we really need to consider the urban forest long term and what can sustain us moving forward. And this is a goal in the urban forest management plan. So this is also something to consider as well. Yes, you are removing significant trees and you're going to replace them with a smaller version, and it will take time for that to catch up. But it will also, these trees, when selected, and we'll work with STC on this, will probably be poised to react to the changes that we're seeing in our environment and into the future. So there is some longevity attached to that as well. So for your consideration.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know if you want to flash up the timeline just so I can recall for anyone that's listening when the comment opens up for SEPA. Perfect. I mean, again, public comment's always open, but that 21 November is when the SEPA comment period opens up, and then the 6th will have the public hearing?
It'll be posted to the city's legal notices on the website. So if you just went to the city's website, typed in legal notices, you'd see that pop up. It'd be the most recent one on the 21st.
Perfect. Hot tip. Cool.
A question?
Yeah.
So Councilmember Treen obviously has a long list of questions and concerns. Is there a way that we can make sure that as you get those asked and answered, that we can get them posted and out there for everyone to see, so that it isn't something that people are seeing for the first time on the 6th? I think if you have those questions, other people may as well, and it's probably worth getting that information out there and making sure everyone can see it and digest it ahead of time.
Yeah, I think that would make sense, kind of like the budget spreadsheet thing that we have, if that works for you all. Cool. All right, well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so next for new business, we have solid waste and recycling with Republic Services discussion. And I believe Audrey is taking lead, and then we have Wendy here from Republic Services. And I'm not sure if now is an appropriate time to extend this meeting. Huh? I don't. Yeah, I don't know. 10 minutes-ish, but then we have exec session after.
I move we extend to 10:30.
Second. Any discussion? All's in favor to extend till 10:30, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All right, 6-1, we are, I should cut myself off. Now extended until 10:30. Please, Audrey, Doug, Wendy, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, and Interim City Manager. With me tonight, I'm first of all Audrey Sarcy, Interim Public Works Director, and with me this evening is Doug McIntyre, Senior Transportation Planning Manager. Doug and I and his team oversee the solid waste management collection contract on behalf of the city. And also joining us in person is Wendy Weicker, Municipal Outreach Manager for Republic Services, our contract hauler. Thank you, Wendy, for joining us in person tonight. Let me share our slide or deck really quick. This will be a fairly short presentation. Please let us know if you have any questions along the way. We are here this evening just to share with you the rate increases for 2023. So just a little bit about our solid waste collections in Sammamish. So the green area is the area that is served by Republic Services through the city contract. Republic also serves Klahani customers. That area, however, is governed by the Utilities and Transportation Commission, or the UTC. So the green portions currently serves just over 16,000 residential customers, 145 commercial customers, and 21 multifamily customers. The proposed rate increases for 2023 capture two different portions. So one is the service portion of our solid waste rates, and that increase is proposed. The most important portion of that rate increase is the CPI adjustment, that is 9.54%. The other portion of the rate increase is actually the King County disposal fee. So that is attributed to the tipping fees that King County Council has already approved in September. This chart reflects the most common service for the city of Sammamish. That's a 32-gallon cart, and these are the rates that will go into effect January 1st of 2023. So after this evening, the city staff will verify the rates with Republic, and they will provide noticing both in the Seattle Times and work with the city to communicate out this notice to all of our customers. Typically, that includes messaging in their billing inserts, as well as updates on Republic Services, the Sammamish website. And just while we have a few minutes this evening, we're more than happy to answer any questions about Republic Services, the contract, and then we'll be back to you in the next few weeks for a few of these items, and likely in 2023 for a few more of the items, but to discuss our new organics law. That's a statewide law that will be going into effect in 2023. So we'll be back, I believe, next week to talk to you a little bit about that, along with the RePlus pledge from King County, the King County rate restructure, and the recycling markets update. So that is all that we had prepared this evening. If you had any questions, we will gladly take them.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Howe?
Just quickly, I've seen some public comment about folks that are apartment dwellers that believe that they're paying for waste management twice through their either their homeowners association or through their apartment dwelling. And I could actually forward that to you if that would be helpful, but they feel like somehow they're getting double charged. So that would be one question. I'd be happy to provide more information about that so that we could get a better answer than me stumbling through that. The other question I have has to do with recycling. You know, we've certainly heard from different sources, some great, some not great, that plastic recycling is just pointless. That we can't sell it, we can't give it away, we just end up burying it. Is that true or not true?
I'm hoping that Wendy might be able to help us answer that. I know that is an industry and market that has evolved quite a bit, especially in the last 2 years with our different trends as we've been at home. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you very much for those questions, Councilmember. First of all, regarding the double billing, please do follow up because folks don't like to pay for things twice, and we already know rates are going up already given inflation and labor challenges and supply challenges. So we take customer service very seriously. After safety, it's our #1 priority. So please follow up with me with that. And also just want to thank you guys for your staff too. Audrey, Doug, and Jen and I work really well together to handle any customer issues that come up at any time. And like most utilities, you don't want to hear from us. You just want to know that everything's great. And every once in a while, when something bad happens, we're here to kind of make sure that things get fixed and resolved as soon as possible. But your best utility partner is one you never hear from and doesn't break. So really appreciate working with your team to address any customer issues that come up and get ready for inclement weather and help work together with all the county work that's coming our way and all the legislative work that's coming our way. And we really have a good partnership with our city and our county and our state in trying to figure out how to manage our materials. And the organics law is just one, and plastics are another. So no, we don't bury plastics. We collect it and we recycle it. And commodity markets are very dynamic, as you can imagine, given the China sword issue a couple years ago. And with COVID, everything kind of went topsy-turvy. But we have one of the best recycling centers in the country down at 3rd and Lander in Seattle. And any of you who are interested in seeing it firsthand, I would welcome taking you on a tour because we have all kinds of material, all kinds of staff there pulling everything of value out of the system. And what we need help with is end markets, right? We want to keep it domestic, and we need more partners in taking that material, especially with coming headwinds in our economy. A lot of materials aren't so easy to get to market because folks aren't ordering as much on Amazon. Cardboard has taken a dive in the last few months. We still need to move it though because we collect it, we run it through our MRF, and then it sits there until we can find a place to sell it. So we have a lot of partners in taking that material, and plastic is definitely not wasted. And since you queued up plastic, I'm going to tell you that our Public Services has an innovative facility coming online next year in Las Vegas. We're going to take all the recycled plastic that we collect, get it down to Vegas, and turn it back into plastic that can be reused in the same level that it was. So water bottles are going to become water bottles, Tide bottles are going to be Tide bottles, food containers are going to be food containers. We've noticed nationally that we are having a rough time moving plastic, as you noted, so we are making the huge investment to make sure that the materials we collect can be recycled to the same caliber that they are. So we don't need it to turn into any more carpet or park benches. We want to make sure that the manufacturers who are demanding recycled content have a place to get it, and that's going to be one of our polymer centers. We have this one coming on online, and we have 4 more planned. So we know this is a national conversation, a national solution that we're happy to be a part of. So happy to give you an update anytime about recycling markets, how we try to reduce contamination at the curb, run it through our recycling center, and then get it to end market and end use at the end of the day. So we can, in fact, have that circular economy that we all want, and we're all working together to achieve.
I'll take you up on that tour. And in terms of just how are Sammamish residents doing in terms of producing, recycling that is actually usable? Or do we still have an education deficit?
We always have an education deficit because every day people are putting different material in the bins, and sometimes the young kids go out and take the trash out and put it in the recycle bin, right? So we need to do a lot of work on education outreach with our single-family residential customers as well as our multifamily customers. And as folks come and go and as bins get full, and there's always work we can do on that front. So we have a lot of education outreach programs that we do. And overall, within the region, Sammamish's recycled materials go with Bellevue's and North Bend's, and it all kind of gets bundled together. So we have an aggregate sense of the contamination levels that we have, and they range between 10 and 20% at any given time. So it really depends kind of on the time of year, on the volume that people are getting. And during COVID, we had so much change, it was just dynamic every month. But Sammamish residents are doing about as well as everybody else, and there's always more work to be done.
Thank you for that.
Does the offer stand for a Vegas trip? I think that's what I heard you say.
I did, and I would be happy to get a
Deputy Mayor Lamb.
delegation to Vegas in the spring. That is on my list, in fact.
So each year, and well, in 2021, 51 million tons of plastics were produced, and only 5% of that is recycled. 2/3 of Americans believe that if there is a recycle symbol on the package, that it is recyclable, and that is not true. So, ones and twos, which are typically milk containers and soda bottles, those are recyclable. The the rate is either 20% of those are recycled or 10%, 10 to 20%. What I struggle with Republic is their education to the customers on what can be recycled. And I've actually called Republic a couple of times asking whether or not number 5 plastics can be recycled. Those are yogurt containers, which are very popular. They're the amber prescription bottles, they're lids. So, and each time I call Republic, they will not give me an answer whether or not number 5 can be recycled. And they tell me, well, it's the shape. We go by the shape. But I think education-wise, if people understood that only number 1s and 2s could be recycled, those would go into the bin, and then there would be less contamination issues. So, since you're here, can number 5 plastics be recycled? And is there a plan to improve the education materials that Republic puts out over what can be recycled other than shapes of the containers?
I am so excited you asked that question. I'm so thrilled we have a recycling nerd on your council, so thank you very much. I will say we collect all 7 types of plastics, and we sort them into 3 different buckets. So 1s and 2s are absolutely more valuable, you're correct. And those yogurt containers are a little less valuable, but we can still bundle them and recycle them. And then all the thinner plastics, the packaging, the film, that can also be bundled. So I have a great picture, and if I can do a slide deck next time and come give you guys a recycling market update, I'd be happy to do that in mass on camera or separately at your sustainability committees or 3 at a time, because there is so much we could talk about. But the different plastic grades have different marketability at the end of the line. So we recover as much as we can. We find the marketing partners at the end to take it at the end of the line. And I think we can all do better. So it's not just a Republic problem, it's a Republic, Recology, and waste management problem. We have to work together regionally with our King County partners and at the state level to make it clear what is recycled and what isn't. I agree those arrows are confusing. Is it made from recyclable materials, or can I put it in the blue bin? Yes and yes, but bottom line is it has to be empty, clean, and dry. If you put something dirty in the bin and it contaminates all the paper and cardboard, then you've ruined the rest of the stream. And the plastic, we can't clean it, we don't wash it. We do the best we can, and we try to minimize the contamination that comes through and then contaminates the rest of the stream that's put together.
So can number 5 plastics be recycled?
Yes, it can.
Yes, it can.
It's just not as valuable as 1 and 2. You're absolutely right. Yeah, and this Polymer Center in Vegas, it will take you to in the spring. We'll show you all the different ways we take all the different plastic and turn it into 32 different plastics that the producers want, right? So everybody wants to do more to improve our plastics problem, right? So making materials out of recycled materials rather than virgin material is a solution we all are working for, and the producers are doing a really good job of moving in that direction already, and we're doing a good job of trying to bring them the recycled materials so they can meet their obligations and commitments.
So you could improve your education materials and list the numbers so that the residents understand what numbers can be recycled. Because sometimes you get containers where it's a number 5 plastic top and a number 1 bottom. You know, the main container's a number 1. So do you separate them? Because they can't be contaminated, because you're not going to want, to throw it all in one bin and contaminate your plastic. So, are they separated before it goes into the bin? So I guess I am, and I read up on this stuff, and I am confused over the policies, over what can be recycled at Republic. And so I can only imagine that other people are confused as well.
Lots of people are confused, yes. And we do as much communication outreach as we can. If you have ideas for how we can improve our education materials, happy to have that conversation offline. We have standard materials that we share with all of our cities that are consistent with King County guidelines around what goes in the blue bin, and state level requirements as well, and national requirements around labeling. So we can always do more. Everyone's throwing things into the black bin, blue bin, and green bin every day. So happy to do whatever we can to help get the message out, especially when we know some properties, whether it's single family or multifamily, are having increased levels of contamination.
Okay.
But yeah, we have
And
all
since
kinds of
this is supposed to be a
material.
rate discussion, I will ask a rate question. So the rate is tied to inflation. It's 9.5%.
Correct.
I see in the agenda that it is pre-approved and it's non-negotiable, but it is possible you could take less than 9.5%. And does that ever happen?
It's not particularly possible because our rates are based on the contract that we signed years ago, and we have a lot of headwinds, as Councilmember Stewart pointed out, with our own labor challenges and supply chains, and it's not something we can do for one city and not do it for another. And a big part of the rates is the disposal part that's coming from King County with the whole landfill conversation and replus work that we're doing. So, no, we typically take the CPI that we have contracted, and when it comes time to renegotiate, we could talk about changing the CPI to a cap of 5 or a floor of 6 or whatever we want to do, but the contract term is over a period of time, and rates are bid based on the trucks and labor and calculating for growth within the cities, and CPI is just one component. We provide free recycling to the city, and so the commodity values fluctuation there is the risk that this company takes on behalf of Sammamish residents. So CPI is the one place where we try to keep up with all the costs and inflation and challenges and headwinds that we all have in all of the ways that we try to do work in the public and private sector.
Okay, thank you.
All right, looks like we still have 2 more hands, but yeah, definitely in the interest of time, if we could focus on rates. Yeah, Councilmember Indapure?
Thank you. My question is, do you have programs which can subsidize or help our residents in Sammamish with this increase in rates? Like, do you have programs that can, subsidize or have anything that you can work with for folks who are on a fixed income or, just can't afford this increase?
We can work with your city staff to follow up on that. I know we help and support residents who need help with carry-out service if they're disabled, and low-income subsidies kind of are dependent on the contract. And at the moment, I can't remember if that's baked into the contract or not this time, but if it's something we want to add, we can certainly talk about that going forward. But we have payment plans for folks that can't meet their obligations, and again, these rates are actually pretty good compared to a lot of cities in the region. A lot of contracts that have come up to be renewed recently, rate increases are going up between 30 and 50% to make up for the changes that we've seen in the last several years based on COVID, based on inflation, based on supply chain challenges. So in terms of rate, I think your residents will be pretty satisfied given some of the recent rate increases that other cities who've recently rebid their contracts have seen lately. So I can share that information offline with your interim, soon-to-be permanent city manager. Solid waste is a fascinating topic, and it's a utility that, again, folks take for granted, but there are a lot of costs with trucks and supply and labor and parts, and we just try to get here every day and meet our customers' needs and meet your city's needs and your growing community's needs, and we're competitive with the other providers in the region, and we all have to work together to get to zero waste and get to circular economy, as well as make sure that we keep the public health and safety with keeping the streets and alleys clean.
Another quick question. Are school districts part of this rate increase?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
I think you've already gone once. Councilmember O'Farrell, I'm going to let her go.
Thank you.
I think you've already spoken once, right?
I'll answer anybody's question.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
Okay.
Sorry, Wendy, I just wanted to bring up, we had received some public comment from a resident who lives in a townhome and who has to have the green bin for putting yard waste in, and had wondered why residents who don't really have a yard or have a very small yard, why they're required to have that. And is there a way for them to opt out of that and only having 2 bins instead of 3?
I'm not sure if they can opt out. I can't remember what the service provisions are, but they can reduce the size of their cans, and I think a lot of residents want their food waste collected as well. So we do try to do increased organics, and the new state law, 1799, is going to require more of that. So there's a whole nother conversation we have to have down the road as that law becomes a reality for collecting more of that material, processing more of that material, and certainly bringing in the commercial sector. There's a lot more work ahead that we're all going to be required to do together that's going to have some increased costs and have some increased logistics and have some increased destinations for that material. And so I don't think bins are going away. I think we might be able to adjust sizes, but we're going to have to work together to keep all that material out of the landfill.
Yeah, okay, so they may be able to request a smaller bin, and I think they were doing some composting themselves, so maybe they felt they didn't need it at all. But, okay, so if they could at least get a smaller bin.
And in some multifamily situations, we can move from multiple individual carts to one container, depending on the layout and logistics of the particular community and what those residents want.
And would that be up to their HOA to kind of talk about that?
It's up to their HOA, and it's whatever service we can provide. And then, folks may or not want to walk the 30 steps when they want to just walk to their garage. So yeah, it requires some negotiation with the property management or HOA or whoever wants to start working on this with us. And we talk to our customers anytime they call and want to change their service, and are happy to provide that service anytime anybody wants.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Can I just ask a quick question? When you say empty, clean, and dry, how clean does it have to be? Because I got teased at my house for putting my plastics on the top shelf of the dishwasher before I put them in the recycle bin.
No, that's perfect, because any residual left in that container might flake off and get into the newspaper and mixed paper and then contaminate that. So there's a very low tolerance for what our partners in the other end of the recycling center will take.
Great. And then I'm really disappointed that when you said you were shipping the plastics to Vegas, you didn't say that what we send to Vegas stays in Vegas. So
It's not going there yet, but that facility will be online shortly in 2023. And I'm happy to show you pictures and tell you more about that and send you all the slide decks you want. But it's really cool that this company is making that commitment to domestic recycling and reuse.
Excellent. Thank you.
I was going to say, you're trying to send me there. I have to stay there now. Yeah, I think that is it, unless Deputy Mayor Lamb, you still have and then Ratuja, I think we're good. Okay, definitely come back. Obviously, we have lots more questions, and we definitely want to talk around contract time, and I think just like education, I think it would be super fun to have because I just learned a lot, and I don't go look at my recycling bin, but I have a lot to do, I think. So that's super helpful.
And I'll be better prepared. I thought we were talking math, not recycling.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, you got math, and then you got, everything else.
Especially at 10 o'clock at night, y'all, so.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wendy,
Yes,
and
thank
thank you, Audrey and Doug. I don't know if you need, okay, you guys are all good?
Thank you.
Yeah,
We're good.
all
Thank
right.
you very much, Mayor.
Yeah, have a
Thank
good
you, Wendy.
night. So next we do have an executive session I don't think we're going to get in there back in 20 minutes, are we?
Excuse me, Mayor. I don't know if there are any council reports.
Yeah, I skipped over that, sorry. Any council reports or city manager report? I don't think I saw any hard copies, but anything verbal?
I don't have anything at this moment.
Okay, cool. So as far as executive session, how long do we anticipate? And we'll need to extend, I think. Half an hour back there? Or half an hour extend? Yeah.
I move we extend to 10:45.
Okay.
Just to give us a buffer.
And then is 20 minutes a good starting point back there? I have no idea.
It's easier to extend the executive session
Okay.
time. If you aim for longer and get done sooner, then you still have to wait till the end.
Okay. Well, I second your 10:45 motion. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we are extended till 10:45, and let's start with 20 minutes, so back at 10:30, 10:31. Yes.
Sounds good.
And, sorry, hold on, I need to read my thing. So executive session to receive and evaluate complaints or charges brought against a public officer or employee pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101F, and city council may take action on our way back. Thank you.
The executive session will be extended until 10:44 p.m. Extension until 10:44 for the executive session. Thank you.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
Yeah. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, 6-0. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.